Good evening and welcome. I'm Adam Block, Chair of the Needham Planning Board, and I call this meeting to order. This meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted in a hybrid manner consistent with current state regulations and is being recorded. Public access to this meeting does not ensure there will be public participation unless required by law. We have two public hearings this evening that will include an opportunity for public comment related to at least one of the hearings. For the record, I will now confirm attendance of planning board members. When I call your name, please respond that you are present. Paul Alpert.
Here.
Artie Crocker.
Here.
Jean McKnight.
Here.
I heard from Natasha that she was coming in person tonight, so we anticipate her arrival momentarily, and we'll call her into the record of attendance on her arrival. In case there is a change of her plans, Alex, if you're able to keep an eye on participants in Zoom and attendees in the event that she switches over, that would be helpful. I'd like to also call present our planning staff, Lee Newman.
Present.
Very good, thank you. And Alex?
Present.
Lee, very good, thank you. For those participating in the meeting, please be aware that anything you state and share will be a matter of public record, and others may be able to see you. All supporting materials for this meeting, including the agenda, are available on the town's website at needhamma.gov. That's needhamma.gov unless otherwise noted. The ground rules for this meeting are designed to allow for an accurate public record. I will introduce each of the speakers on our agenda. After they complete the remarks, board members will be asked for any comments, questions, or motions. We have additional ground rules governing our public hearings, which I will review momentarily. Our first agenda item is a public hearing this evening, which was previously continued in respect of an application by Wellbow for Needham Landlord LLC regarding the redevelopment of a property located at 100 West Street. We received a letter from the applicant's attorney dated November 4 requesting a continuance for 30 days. Come on in.
No,
Oh. Well, all right. Sorry you can't be with us. Requesting continuance for 30 days. At the request of the applicant, can I please have a motion to continue the hearing to December 19 at 7:30 p.m.?
So moved.
We have a motion by Artie. Can I have a second? Second by Jean. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I come to the vote. Paul Alpert.
Aye.
Artie Crocker.
Aye.
Jean McKnight.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We have continued this hearing to December 19, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. Thank you. Our before we actually move on to our, is everything okay, Alex?
I'm going to go print some signature sheets for the decision. Continue.
Thank you very much. All right, very good, Alex. And before we continue on our second item on our agenda, I just, for those that are present, even in, by Zoom, our Needham High School Division I boys soccer team is in the Final Four, and about an hour ago began its game with Weymouth, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to give a shout out to our boys and to say, go Rockets.
Nice.
Now what I'd like to do, we have a couple of decisions in front of us. I think what I'd like to do is take the deliberation for 557 Highland Avenue first before we deal with and give time for Alex to deal with the signature sheets for the decision for 140 Kendrick Street.
Oh, you're going to move the deliberations up for 5, but they were scheduled for 9 something, correct?
There's no time on the agenda.
Okay.
So, so I thought what I would do first is review the relief sought and take a straw poll to give Lee some direction for our decision, and then after that we'll speak about some specific conditions. I would actually like...
Oh, hold on. Natasha isn't here, and she should be here for the deliberations at 557.
That's my preference. I know that she has some comments.
No, she should be here for the deliberations at 557.
You're right.
She should be.
And here she is.
Okay, good.
Perfectly timed. We'll note for the record the attendance of Natasha. You arrived at a perfect time, Natasha, because we're going to take up now the deliberations for 557 Highland Avenue. So thank you very much. Perfectly timed, right on cue. Couldn't have planned it even better, any better.
Thank you.
So the relief requested, I'm just saying that we'll go over the relief, get a straw poll for Lee so we can give Lee some direction for the decision, and then we'll also talk about some specific conditions. So the relief requested includes a special permit for a parking waiver for a height of 55 feet. And Natasha, I know you had some comments on the garage that you wanted to discuss. And that also would affect the special permit to waive 288 parking spaces. So we'll come back to those unless we're actually just ready to jump in, I guess. Yes, and then we'll continue on to the next. Good. So, so the special permit to waive 288 parking spaces relates to the height of the garage. So, I think early in the hearing, I think I had asked the applicant's traffic engineer if we could reduce the height of the parking and take a story off. I know, Natasha, you two shared a similar concern or question. Right. They had responded at the hearing, if I remember correctly, that that having conducted their own their parking demand study, that they had the need for something like 1,300 parking spaces. And that was based on actual experience from their other properties with similar uses. And so I see the options in front of us. One is, do we approve the special permit of a height of 55 feet and waive the 288 parking spaces? And we don't have any testimony from any engineer saying that, and refuting either the engineering information that we received from the applicants from VHB, from their traffic engineer, nor from GPI, who is engaged by the town as a peer reviewer, suggesting that we ought to reduce the parking to from 1,300 and something to 1,200 and something parking spaces, and to reduce the stories. I know that the parking garage is, Jean, as you had mentioned, is pushed back. It's set back 200 feet from Gould Street, and you also mentioned rightly that it's in the bowl. The topography of the land slopes down.
I'd like to speak to that again.
Go ahead.
I reviewed the plans more carefully because we had been told that. But when I actually looked at the plans and looked at the height of the ground level of the parking garage, I could not see that it was at an elevation lower than Gould Street. I meant to bring a magnifying glass. I only have 8.5 by 11 printouts.
Gee, I have this for you. Call me Inspector Gadget.
That is marvelous. And I'm wondering if this is, but it's 130, I think it's 138 is the elevation of Gould Street. And the parking garage at the front corner, excuse me, I think it's 130. I remember saying it was not much less than 138. I can't see the exact number here. Maybe it's clearer on this other plan. But I'm not really seeing that garage is at a considerably lower elevation than Gould Street. And even going far back at the back of the garage, it doesn't. The elevation is maybe 5 feet lower. But it's not, it's not what I expected to see when I actually looked at it carefully. Now, that's the latest plans, but I'm not sure they have elevations. I don't know why I can't see this better. I should have marked, you know, the numbers when I was at home with a pen, so I could actually see them better. But my conclusion is that I was mistaken in thinking that there's any major difference in elevation.
I have 126 at one end and 132 at another, and that Gould Street is at an elevation, I think, of 100 and... Well, it's interesting, Gould Street at Highland is 143. And
Gould Street at Highland, yeah, but Gould Street,
so
as you're looking right there at the entrance to the development, I believe, my memory is...
It's 140.
Yeah.
If you look at Channel 5.
Yeah.
The entrance Channel 5. Because that's where this garage is.
So the, but I mean, the point is, I guess, which is true, is that at the southwest corner of the lot, it's at a higher elevation than the northeast corner of the lot, where it effectively does, and we can see on the contours here, that it does bowl. But regardless, there is...
My point is
yes.
that what we're concerned about is the height of the garage. And when you're looking at the project from Gould Street, as many of the designs show, and as Natasha was noting, the garage appears very tall, very just as tall as the proposed north building, and
when you're right at the intersection, when you're from
just
Wingate looking
overwhelmingly tall.
And matter of fact, the only elevation that matters is the start of the garage, not the back of the garage.
Yes.
The start of the garage is the one that's defining the visual elevation from Gould Street, not the back of the garage.
That's correct.
Yeah, not the back.
Yeah, I'm able to look at a blow up on my computer screen, and Gould Street is at 139.
139.
Gene had that number correct, and it looks like the Gould Street side of the proposed garage is at 133.
Yeah, 5
So
feet,
it's only-
5 feet difference. That's
So it's only the 6
what I
foot.
remembered. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not,
Oh, actually 6.
yeah,
yeah.
that's
yeah.
not much of a
It's six-
bowl.
It's a
No.
6 foot difference
No.
there.
And so then with essentially six stories being above ground, you've got 2 stories of parking below ground,
Well, there was 5 stories above ground and 2 below.
but you've got the roof. The
Yeah.
roof,
Visually, it looks like 6.
Visually-
Yeah, visually, it looks like 6.
it's just what I was going to say, visually looks like another story.
Yeah, visually, it looks like 6.
Now, it even occurred to me, I mean, one could go back and analyze the language of the bylaw as to height of garage and so forth, but just on viewing the height of that garage, including the roof with its walls all around it, and the fact that it's being used for parking, makes me think that the garage is higher than 55 feet above ground, and therefore is in violation of the actual terms of our bylaw.
So, Lee, where would the height of the garage be measured from? In a scenario in particular where there's a 6-foot elevation difference between one end and the other?
I think, well, they're using like, I think, an average grade
Right.
when they are measuring height. And the drawings actually show where which are part of the plan set, a 55-foot height up to level 6 of the garage.
A 55, excuse me, let me clarify that, Lee. A 55-foot height up to level 6, you mean the roof of a level 6?
Yes, that's how I understand this.
Or is it the roof?
Above that is the roof level where vehicles will park, and there is a wall all around it. Is that correct? is the measurement to the top of the wall of the roof
Yeah, they're all
level, or is the measurement to the top of level 6, to the roof of level 6?
And also and what about the top of the elevator stairway?
I think there
Facade
is
at
a
the beginning.
provision for mechanicals to be higher.
Okay.
So what I think Lee is saying is that the average height up to this point is 55 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be compliant with the zoning bylaw.
But we are granting a special permit for that 55 feet.
Yes.
So in fact, if it looks more like 63 feet, you know, with the wall and everything around the roof and cars being parked to the roof, and we just feel that that's going too far, it's within our power to say no to that special permit.
So
that's why I'm not troubled too much by saying, well, is it lawful or is it not lawful?
Well, plus there's there's a visual from Gould Street, which is a lot of this was based on, initially was based on what was it looking like? Was it looking like, was it massing? How is it massing compared to everything else?
That's, so I think what we need clarity on is, no zoning bylaw is written when it's dealing with the height of a structure to account for, the height of a vehicle, whether it's a convertible that's 3 feet off the ground, or a sedan that might be 4 feet off the ground, or an SUV that might be, 7 feet off the ground. From the tires at the pavement to the height of the roof of a vehicle. So it's really just a function of the measurement of, Lee, is the height measured to what would really be the floor of the parking, of the 6th story of the parking structure, or it wouldn't be measured at the wall height, would it?
The height is defined as the vertical distance of the highest point of a structure or the roof of a building above the average grade of the ground adjoining the building or surrounding the structure.
So there is a safety perimeter. So there's a safety perimeter around the roof of the structure. Part of it's open and part of it's, a couple of feet off the ground, and then there are some other structural elements that look like it's maybe 4 feet or something above the actual, to support a railing around the perimeter of the thing. So are you saying, Lee, that the 55 feet is at the height of the railing, which is the tallest point on the, or is it really only the structure, or is it, where the actual asphalt is where the car parks?
It's the bylaw defines it as the highest point of a structure.
So how have we applied that with the parking structure, let's say TripAdvisor? Were you measuring off the height of the vehicles at the highest part of the structure, or the structure itself, a wall?
Without going back to that permit and looking at the drawings, I can't answer that question.
So clearly, we're not going to permit something that's a violation of the zoning bylaw. So I think we have to look into that a little further for our next meeting. I think that presuming that it's a violation of the zoning bylaw, then we can't permit it. But presuming for a moment that it's not in violation of the zoning bylaw, then
What does that say?
33.
What does that say?
would you folks like the magnifying glass? Are you able to record it?
128. So it's 128.
So-
What is that? What does that one say? What does that say?
Oh, wait.
Garage level 4 is 184, so that's the 50.
That's 56. The
184, 6, and
Look
130.
at the average, if we're looking at the average grade. If you take the average grade.
I think if you
128.
speak louder so that the
Yeah,
public
sorry.
can.
So the average grade looks like it's 128. And then that's at the top of the, that's the top of the asphalt. There's the top of the structures right there. that would fit, right? So, but I'm not sure what, yeah. So that number right there it looks like it's the asphalt height. So this structure is more than 55 feet above the average grade.
Well, but we have to look at the grading, because
Yeah.
it's all based on the grading.
Yeah.
That's just, yeah, because.
Yeah, but if we look, so the average, so if we're taking it from the average grade, which is 128 feet, and the asphalt is 184 feet, but that's the asphalt, it looks like. The floor looks like it's 184
So I'm going to be
feet.
more specific, actually, Artie. I
So-
appreciate what you're saying, but, so for reference, we're looking at drawing number AG-301.
And it might have changed, because that's, the date on this is.
And this is actually from, yeah, this is from, that's correct, from March 30. But on this sketch, and I don't think this has changed in the subsequent plan set, but it records an average grade for the garage at 130 feet, and
Where do you see 130? Is it
right here,
right hand
Right
side?
here.
right here, it's right here, it's right here.
Okay.
And then,
Is that other one? Okay.
AG.
and then it says,
AG 201, you say?
AG 301.
Okay. So that, okay.
So just, already hold on one second, bud. So then it shows the garage roof, and it says 198 feet 6 inches.
Is that the top of the stairway elevator area? Or is that the,
Yeah, I think that you're right.
okay, but the next level down, I think, is the floor of the
Level,
floor of the
so
garage.
184 and 6 inches.
But
So
that's the floor of the garage, not the top of the wall.
that's correct. And the top of the wall would probably be about 4 feet over that.
No, 5 or
Not gonna
6. I would say 5 or 6 feet over that.
So 184 minus 130,
It's 854.
4 feet. So it allows another foot at 55 feet. So we have a technical question here, Lee. We'll ask you to consult with the applicant. Perhaps they have a revised set that we're not looking at, but it does show the grade level at level 6 at being 184 feet and 6 inches, which with an average grade of 130 is, what did I say, 54 feet?
Yeah, so 54 feet to the floor, the top
So
floor.
then, so Lee, I'm going to ask you to just two things. First, please confirm with the applicant that they have not updated that calculation, that measurement. And then secondarily, can you confirm, please, with Dave Roach, our building commissioner, and advise us how, whether that 55 height is measured off of, you know, the floor of the 6th floor or the height of the wall on the 6th floor.
Well, I think
Okay.
Lee already said that.
Thank you very much.
Lee already said it's the top of the building,
Stop.
top of the structure.
So it will be helpful for me at least then, you know, just to get that clarity. And I don't know if, you know, Chris Heap has any comment on that application and interpretation either, but feel free to reach out to him too. So nevertheless, we know that as a foundational point, we would not permit something that is a violation of the zoning bylaw. That's the first point. The second point, I think, is assume for a moment that it is compliant, however it's interpreted, that it's compliant. So what are the options? One is to allow it. The other is to reduce it. And if we did reduce it a story, I mean, what is the consequence of us reducing the stories, the height? It means that we're going to have excess off-street traffic. We're going to have on-street and on-neighborhood parking. So to the extent that it is compliant, I'm weary of, I'm mindful of the point that you're making, that from that intersection at TV Place opposite Wingate, from that point of view, the garage looks large, regardless of the fact that it's set back 200 feet from Gould Street, and it's, you know, and it's lower than the main building, than the north building. So I'm mindful of that. I'm trying to think through what our solutions are, where we don't have any evidence that says that their parking demand is less than what they're proposing. So that leads to me that, you know, are there ways that we can screen it differently? That we can, you know, they've talked about adding trees. In this plan from March, it shows some low-lying shrubs, but they've said that they would install, in addition to the fabric material over these sections of the parking structure, that they would plant trees, which trees take time to grow. So I don't expect them, you know, to be 40-foot trees installed right out of the gate, but they will grow. And what are the other screening solutions? I'm mindful as well that, you know, if we, again, this is to the extent that it is compliant, that one second, Paul, that we're arbitrarily, you know, overriding the actual parking demand and minimizing the capacity that's not going to be able to meet that demand. So, you know, there's another possibility, again, of, you know, proportionally reducing the buildings themselves, which poses other significant problems. But Paul, you had comments. Go ahead.
I'm looking at page AG 211.
Which plan set?
What?
Yep.
Which plan set?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just.
AG, what was that?
211.
211, yeah, I've got a print, I've got a.
Yep.
Out of it.
So it looks like, it looks to me like what we have here is a view of the garage, and all the way on the right-hand side,
Yes, that's right.
there are numbers, and
Yes.
I think those numbers are the elevation numbers.
Yes,
They
that's
are.
correct.
You said that the first two levels are below ground. So where you've got, right, so where you've got garage level 1, it says 133 feet. Garage
Yes.
level B1 is at 123 feet, garage level B2 is at 113 feet, because they're below ground.
Yes.
Garage level 1 is at 133, so when you get to the roof is at 198 feet 6 inches.
No.
All the way up.
The garage roof, right? But that's
That's one
actually
side.
hold on one second. That 198 and 6 inches.
Yep.
Is the height of the mechanicals, not
Right.
the roof of the
So
garage.
garage level 6
Yes, correct.
is 184.
Yes, that's what we said.
6.
Yes.
So 184.6 from
130
130
is 54.
is, right, 54 feet 6 inches.
But
And the bylaw says it can be,
150. It's gonna be 55.
No, but that elevation is to the floor of the top of the garage, not the wall at the top of the garage.
So in other words, I'll show you, Paul, here.
Yeah.
So this grade, that one level,
yep,
goes to here. This part, the floor, like
Yep.
Artie's saying.
right,
But there's still a wall structure that's
Yep.
higher.
right.
So that's why I've asked Lee to confirm if the height at 55 feet is allowable here, or for a safety rail that's 5 feet above it.
Okay. So, well, that's at 179. No, this level right here is 179.
Yes.
So this level right here is 184.6. So that's the floor.
At
That's,
the highest
okay.
floor.
So that's 54 feet, and they're allowed 55 feet.
Yes, but
So they're right at the cusp.
But the question is, Artie's question is this, is
That wall,
Yes.
yeah.
So let's continue to move the conversation forward, and maybe we'll establish this. Now, go ahead, Natasha.
So, a couple of things. I think the parking bylaw requires more parking than they're actually doing.
Yes.
And so they're asking for relief of 288 spaces.
Yeah.
The reason that the special permit is 55 feet, I guess the special permit is 55 feet and then a maximum, and I don't have the square footage, but so I think the reason why this looks larger is because they did the maximum height of the special permit and the maximum footprint of the special permit. Right?
For the garage
For the
itself.
garage, right.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So that's why I think, in general, it looks big. However, so what you were bringing up is what happens if there are, and I think that the bylaw for the town is too much parking. I mean, that's a lot of parking. A lot of places are reducing it, so that's a
Yes.
different story altogether.
Yeah.
However, if they need the amount of spaces that they have, and you're right, people are going to start parking on the street and they're going to do other things, right? So if the height is the maximum, and that's confirmed and all of that, I think better screening, you know, yeah, I guess I don't know if they can't add another floor below ground, you know, to either one of the buildings because of whatever reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is what I think I heard. Then a different type of screening that actually screens it from looking like a parking garage would be better.
So let's talk about, that's a good idea. Let's talk about some of those screening elements. What would be?
Because right now it still looks like a parking garage with screening at the base, right in the front, the corner, and everything. So, I mean, there are different ways of screening, and I think that, and I had mentioned before, Wellesley College has a parking garage, and I know it's only, you know, it goes underground a lot, but it has a facade that actually doesn't make it necessarily look like a typical parking garage, and I think that's a successful way of doing it. There's also ways of adding mesh.
What are those materials that you were speaking of in
It's
Wellesley?
just metal tubes. I mean, they look like bamboo basically.
Okay.
And they're just painted metal. So I guess what I'm saying is that if the screening could make it not look like a garage. My concern of it last time was that when you're coming from Gould Street, it's the first thing you see, right? I know it's 200 feet setback, but again, it's the maximum. They're asking for the maximum width, and, you know, the floor plate and the maximum height. How can we make it so that there's a screening device that just on the Gould Street and on the side can make it feel like it reduces the scale, right? The other side is on the highway side, and the other side faces the building. So I'm not that concerned with those two sides, but the sides that look towards, can there be a material or something that could screen it in a way that doesn't make it look like a parking garage on those two sides?
So that's why I want to take the next couple of minutes and focus our conversation to talk through what those features, specific screening features would be. You mentioned what was it called?
The Wellesley College, it's a parking garage.
But the material you said, it's an aluminum?
Oh, it's just a tube steel. Just a painted tube steel that has a pattern, right? Or it could be that it's a mesh where you have vines growing and you have larger trees, right? So that the vines grow up, or something that right now.
We're going to make it an Ivy League garage.
Well, you might not grow, so there needs to be tested, like the sides, you know. I'm just trying to, those two particular sides, I think, need some kind of material change or texture. And I think they started to put some screening on it, but it still creates the base. It still looks like a parking garage, right? And so how can we start
pretty it up
just transform it with material, and it could be that it's mesh. I mean, there are a lot of examples.
Like, for instance, this part of the garage, if it was a different color.
But that still looks like a garage.
Well, unless it was a mural.
I guess there could be artwork, it could be, I guess what I'm saying is I understand why they have the amount of parking. They're asking for relief of 288 spaces.
I get that.
All of that, but how can it transform itself on the Gould Street side and on the TV place to make it
so it's
a better scale?
So it's up to us now to determine what those conditions for the garage would be, and what specific screening requirements we would make as conditions.
Well, I think that, you know, according to what Lee was saying, I mean, it seems fairly clear. I mean, I remember when we were going through these conversations, you know, with the applicant, that they're again using the phrase, it's in the bowl. So it looks lower because it's in the bowl. Well, in this case, it's only, you know, it's only 3 or 4 to 5 feet lower from Gould Street. It's not that much lower. So it's not much of a bowl, although I appreciate the fact that from their vantage point it kind of was, because the back of it's kind of going into it. But again, from what Lee is saying, the regulation is the top of the structure. And the top of the structure is the top of the highest part of the building, not counting the mechanicals. And this highest part of this building at this point is absolutely above 55 feet.
So we're not talking about that right now.
Well, we were talking, but you had just mentioned both. We're
presuming that it's compliant.
I do want to call out, though, there is a section of the zoning which provides for an exemption from the height. So structures erected on a building and not used for human occupancy, and they give some examples such as chimneys, heating, ventilation, or air conditioning equipment, solar panels, elevator housings, and it goes on, can exceed the building height, provided that no part shall project more than 15 feet above the maximum building height. So I guess the question really is how has a wall like this been treated in other situations?
Okay, so clearly in that statement, clearly we're talking about, I mean, a number of things. One of them is the mechanicals and potential solar and so forth. And as you said, it depends on how it's been treated. Adam, you had mentioned TripAdvisor, how it might have been treated there. I don't know exactly how much higher the wall is from the floor of it. I don't know if it's 5 feet or 6 feet. It's probably it's probably 6 feet, somewhere around there, I would think. But that's going to, I mean, that may not change what we do to camouflage it. That may change nothing as far as what we want to do, what we want to do to camouflage it. But it's certainly going to change greatly visually how it's looking if it has to be 1 floor less.
So I understand what you're saying. We're focusing our conversation right now on specific conditions, presuming it is compliant, on screening to affect the visual impact of the structure, presuming that its height is compliant. Let me ask.
The presumption right now is the height is not compliant. At this point, the presumption is the height is not compliant.
I understand that. So let me ask the question to the board. For the purposes of making a straw poll vote to give some direction to Lee, and Lee, we've already have given you direction to look into how that height is measured and interpreted in another comparable garage structure, and also with perhaps town council and our zoning enforcement officer or building commissioner. But for those of us here, Paul, I'll start with you at the other side of the table. Assuming that their proposed parking structure is compliant at 55 feet, do you support the maximum the height of the garage at 55 feet?
I can't answer that because my concern is, do they have if we ask them to take down a floor, do they have enough parking?
Well,
and I still don't know the answer to that question.
We've asked that. That's already been asked. And they've said, we have testimony from them, that they have said that their parking is based on their demand analysis.
So they're saying that if we take down, if we have them take off a floor, they don't have enough parking.
Which would remove approximately 100 parking spaces.
And so they don't have enough parking.
Correct.
And parking is a major concern, and is a major concern. And so,
the size of the building is
right. And so we then have to weigh the question of, do we allow the 6th floor to give them the parking, assuming that we're not violating the bylaw, and we can screen it so that we're satisfied that it will look appropriately from Gould Street? Or do they need to reduce their tenant occupancy space to have enough parking? With the reduced parking, are they prepared to do that? Because that's the alternative. My major concern is I don't want cars overflowing onto Gould Street.
Yes, and then going into the other areas, both the commercial, because it's some of the natural overflow, the closest point is going to be Wingate, and then it'll be some of the residential areas and some of the commercial areas north of the site. So we obviously, of course, we want to avoid that. So why don't we do this? I think we're dealing with two things concurrently here. One is a question of can we require them or should we require them to reduce it, and the other is the.
Well, I think can we require them is yes. Yes. It's a special permit process, and so we have that authority.
Even though we have our peer review, our own traffic engineer has not said that that their calculations are unreasonable. And they have also affirmatively declared.
Our concern is with the aesthetics of the building.
But
that's why we're asking them to reduce it, is because as part of our special permit process, we're saying that architecturally it doesn't fit into the neighborhood. It's too big. That's where we're coming from.
So we're also coming from multiple points at once. Like, we did study the massing in a very comprehensive way when Natasha was very helpful in the analysis to determine and devise what the zoning bylaw was going to be, and we had passed that. Town meeting had passed that. And so as long as it is 55 feet as we interpret it and that's proper, then it's within zoning bylaw.
I'm going to disagree with you, Adam, because town meeting gave us a maximum.
I understand
The special permit process doesn't mean that we have to allow the maximum when it's applied for.
I understand
and in fact, we said to town meeting, when a project is in front of us, it's in front of us for a special permit, and we have authority and leeway to deal with that, so that if we have a project that they come in at 55 feet, but we don't like the project at 55 feet, we want the project to be at 45 feet, we have the authority to say we're not going to give the special permit at 55 feet. You seem to be saying that we don't have that discretion.
Well, what I'm wondering, I'm not making a declarative statement. I'm asking, I don't know how we're effectively arbitrarily removing 100 parking spaces.
Well, that's the whole point. It's not arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. We have our reason for doing it. We're not doing it because we just want to.
We're doing it, Paul, because we don't like the look of it.
That doesn't exactly. That doesn't mean it's arbitrary. It's because we don't like the look of it.
Well, how do you? So what we don't have is any empirical evidence to determine.
No, we don't know. If the determination is we don't like the look, it's more like we don't like it how it fits into the neighborhood, the character, and how it affects the neighborhood itself. What's happened is that would be more in that line. It's because if you don't like something, you can change how something looks. It's more like the massing of the structure, how it affects that part of the town.
So Artie, you're an engineer.
Yep.
You're an engineer, right?
Yep.
So how does it work as a professional engineer when you're giving a recommendation to a client to install a certain capacity for electrical panels and to deliver a certain amount of electricity, right?
Yep.
And that's based on your own professional expertise. You're giving that recommendation. And the customer says, and the customer, it's not even the customer in this case, the town, without any authority, without any engineered We don't have, we're in the
Let me
absence,
get-
one second, one
I know where you're
second.
going
We're in the absence of any evidence that says that their parking demand is wrong.
Okay,
We have no evidence
well,
and no
so
testimony.
let me give you an, okay, let me give you an example.
Well, just complete the thought. That says that their parking capacity is deficient. If we did that, I would agree. I would say, look, if
Okay,
they can't parking it,
so
we had a
let
parking
me,
sample that said
if we're
parking
talking about an
space is-
analogy like that, whether it's perfect or not, I'll give you an analogy, okay? So we're installing electrical system in a building or in a house, and the grid for Eversource has a certain capacity in that area, and the tenant says, I want something of this level, this amount of capacity. But Eversource, National Grid, whoever it is, says, no, I'm sorry, and this has happened. In that area of our grid, we can't support that. We can't do it. So you may want it, but you can't do it because it can't support it. So if we want to bring the analogy over to this as far as, again, whether we're right, wrong, whatever the final decision is, if we're looking at this and saying, here's the massing of the building, you know, the tenant says, this is what I want. You know, I want this size building, I want this much parking, that's what I want. Then we come back and look and say, I understand that's what you want, but it's not going to work in this area.
This is a 180-degree difference. It's not, it is. It's the reason why it's a 180-degree difference is that it's the applicant that has established what their parking demand is based on an engineering study.
But we're not telling them. We're not telling them that your demand is incorrect. We're not telling them that. Okay, That's not what we're saying. We're saying your demand may be correct, but we can't handle. But that area can't handle the size of the structure to meet that demand. So if we can't handle it, maybe you need to reduce the demand. Because that's what happens on any.
I understand your
That's
point.
what happens like in Eversource territory or an electrical grid. If they can't meet the demand, then that can't go there.
I understand.
I'm not saying exactly what's going to happen here, and I'm not even saying per se reduce this. Some people will not like what I'm saying. I'm not even saying proportionally reduce the size of the building exactly to meet the parking garage if that has to reduce in size. Because if you don't build it, they'll come a different way. Paul, we were talking about that before, kidding around about that before. If they don't build it, it's not that they won't come, it's just they'll come a different way. So we're not saying, you have to do a smaller building, although it may ultimately be that. What we're saying is the parking garage at this point has concerns.
I understand. Jean?
Yes. I was leafing through because, Mr. Chair, I think you said that the engineering studies showed a certain demand for parking. These are all the traffic reports, and I was just leafing through them. And whether it's the applicant's traffic engineer or our traffic engineer responding, it all has to do with traffic. So what I'm looking for is the representations with regard to need for parking. All I'm finding is went along with the original application from Gloucester and Stores, a lengthy letter, memorandum dated April 5th, 2022, making the argument for why we should give the waiver for a reduction in the number of parking spaces. The only information I'm seeing on the demand for parking is what is in our own bylaw. Our own bylaw requires this certain amount of parking. They say they really don't need that much. We should grant them the special permit for the reduction in the number of parking spaces. Now, I realize that they said they think they need this amount of parking orally at our hearings, but that has to do with their ability to rent the space and to be able to say to the tenants, "Oh, there's plenty of parking, don't worry about that." But the roof, for example, has 108 parking spaces. So if we reduce, I think they're looking for a reduction of 288. 88? Yeah, 288. If we reduced it by another 108, or took the 6th floor and looked at how much was in that level and reduced it by that much, and reduced the garage a certain number of feet accordingly, as I think Natasha alluded to just a little earlier in our meeting tonight, many cities and towns are reducing their parking requirements. Ours are particularly high. I'm really not seeing the, you know, as you refer to the engineering information saying they absolutely need this amount of parking or it's going to overflow or anything like that.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree. I do recall that they gave specific testimony about how they arrived at their calculation. And in that explanation, they gave a comparison of their buildings, how they arrived at the calculation. That explanation included the other similar use buildings and other geographies based on actual parking demand. That's what I recall from the actual hearing. So let's do this. I suspect let's put a pin in that for now and see if I think that what we...
Agree on other things?
What's that?
See if we agree on the other...
Yes, exactly. I think that, you know, we have to get a little more clarity, Lee, like we've talked about on the interpretation of the 55 feet and determine if it's compliant. And then we'll ask you to reach out to the applicant as well and to find out from them what the opportunity and consequence is of, you know, of reducing the parking by a story, which would, according to Jean, be approximately 108 parking spaces, how that would impact the project. And then we'll pick this up again and determine, like Natasha has suggested, some very specific screening features that can minimize the visual impact of the parking structure as much as we reasonably can.
Mr. Chairman, should we be asking the applicant to come back to us with some suggestions for screening that would possibly alleviate our concerns?
Lee, how would you recommend we handle that?
It would require reopening the hearing, Paul.
It would.
So I
want
think
to do that.
I mean, another strategy could be that you would have a condition that would require that they provide screening, you know, articulate the goals, and create some design guidelines and have them come back as a plan modification condition.
Natasha, you think that's something we could do?
Yeah, otherwise we're going to be designing it for them, and I think I'd rather have them...
It's not our job to design.
Right, I'd rather have them, which I wish we would have kept if we have a lot of questions like this, keep the hearing open. I know you don't want to, but I'm just saying...
Well, we could reopen the hearing.
We just want them to be able to respond to it, rather than us design something for them. But I mean, it could be that it's the modification that Lee brings up.
Before we close...
What we want. Natasha, there are words that we can use to describe what we want in the plan modification.
That's what I was trying to get.
Isn't that right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we could do that as well. It's just that, I mean, I think if Lee recommended that we could do it through a plan modification, I would rather have them come back with you know, once we write the correct words, or, you know, whatever words we...
Well, I wanted to give...
If we can have screening that can satisfy us, and I'm looking at Natasha when I say us, if we can have screening that can satisfy us that this building will give the look from Gould Street that is more palatable to us.
I
would rather make sure that they have sufficient parking.
Are you talking about even if it's over 55 feet?
Oh, no. If it's over 55 feet, that's a different, that's a whole different story. We're not going to violate the zoning bylaw.
Because currently,
I'm just talking about if the current plan meets the zoning requirements, but our concern is totally aesthetic. The massing of the building is too much for what we think should be there. But it can be alleviated by screening. I would rather have the extra parking spaces and require the screening than require them to reduce the building by a story.
I agree. That's why for the last 35 minutes I've wanted to focus this discussion for us to come up with very specific screening conditions for the garage. presuming it is compliant.
Yep.
Natasha has mentioned a mix of use of materials.
Yep.
Between mesh, potentially some growth, vegetative growth. I'm just making a list. Vegetative growth. Also these painted steel tubes that almost look like the appearance of bamboo.
No, that's just one specific project, that's what I'm
As
saying.
an
I mean,
example.
But
it's up to us to give it to them, because remember, let us remember that the design review board, who is tasked with the responsibility on our behalf to make any of those specific creative suggestions on the appearance of a thing, and we have their comments, and they were otherwise satisfied. So now it's to us. We have on our board the expertise. So it's up to us at this point, because we've closed the hearing, because prior nobody had raised this issue other than saying that we can address this by conditions, to specifically to do that. So that's why I wanted to take the time.
Okay. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I seem to recall when I guess this must have been at our last hearing, because the applicant's representative was speaking and happened to mention a certain screening in a project in Alewife, near Alewife in Cambridge. And it happened, I didn't say anything at the time, but I was driving down Route 2 toward Alewife, and you look to the right, and there's this building that has a work of art covering the whole front of it. And I think that's what he must have meant. I'm only speculating, but it's rather surprising. It's like, wow. At the same time, I don't know, I'm no architect, but I always have this idea, form follows function, and a parking garage should look like a parking garage, and that sort of thing. But maybe it's the new thing, and one advantage I can see of this kind of screening is that it may cut down the light flow off the parking garage. Because remember the TripAdvisor parking garage, perhaps that's before your time on this board, but initially it was brilliant. You could see it everywhere. We complained, they toned it down, but lights come out of these parking garages, and screening has that advantage as well.
Which is one of the reasons why they have the fabric on those sections, of the parking structure. I've seen, in what has been an otherwise challenged area of Miami, which has become recently, I guess, hip.
the design district?
Yeah, you saw that parking structure.
Yeah, they have metal mesh on it.
So there is, and they have murals and so on. There's color and so on. Yeah, so that's. Yeah. So I would like us, at our next time that we discuss this, which I guess will be December 5, that Lee, you'll have had those answers, and then I ask the board, all of us, to give more specific thought to different design features and characteristics that we would like to see for screening, and we can include those as a specific condition or plan modification, for the garage. So I'd now like to turn to.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
I just wanted to insist.
Sure.
You had mentioned right before that, you had mentioned something about there was nothing brought up as far as the massing, making it sound like there's a reason why we can't bring it up now. The fact is that before we closed the hearing, there were comments, even from within the board, at least myself and maybe Natasha at the garage, and myself about the massing of the structure. So we did have comments about this. Then we closed the hearing. So it's not that comments weren't made. The hearing's closed.
What I was referring to, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify that, thank you, is that when we were discussing this, and discussing whether we had enough of our materials with us to be able to close the hearing, to avoid a scenario where we had to reopen it, did we have enough information for us to be able to move into deliberations, close the hearing, move into deliberations, specifically including these types of conditions? That's what I was referring to.
Just as long as we're not saying it doesn't give us a right to do, to take everything into consideration to make a decision based on.
All of,
Okay.
our
as you're not saying that,
responsibility,
that's-
no, our
as long as you're not saying
responsibility is to take all of the testimony that we've received from everybody during the hearing that informs our
Thank you.
our decision. So the next item is a special permit for a floor area ratio of 1.21. Just in terms to try it, given that we've got the next hearing coming up in about 15 or 14 minutes or so, Artie, I assume that you're a no vote
Well,
on
I'd like
on
to-
1.21?
Well, before we vote, actually take a vote on that, and Paul.
It's a straw poll, it's
No, I'm sorry, my apologies, okay.
Yeah.
So before we take the straw poll on this, Paul, at our last meeting, we were talking about the setback and precedent, and, does this set a precedent? And so what I wanted to do is, I looked at some of the information, some of it, Lee, you had read last time, but as far as, let's say, open space requirement, it specifically says that, open space, it may include pervious surfaces used for walkways and patios, but it cannot preclude pervious pavement. But it doesn't allow, for access roads. And that's an open space. In the setback, it doesn't allow for access roads. Now, I know I use the word.
That's a different issue, Artie.
Hold on, no, time out. It's related, Tim, it's related to this, okay? So, it's related to floor, it's raised the size of the building, that's all. And so, we're talking about precedent as far as what it's gonna set. Now, again, I don't wanna penalize any company as far as the fire department coming in saying, I want this. But that's what they did. They came in after we set our guidelines and our bylaws of what we wanted, and as far as the setbacks and so forth. They came back and said, we want this 10-foot access road for the fire trucks, which is going to be, it's permeable pavement, but it's still pavement, it's still black, and plus the 5-foot extensions for our support structures for the fire trucks going in there.
How does that relate to the floor area ratio of 1.21?
Well, I already said it does, because it's related to the setback of the building, which is directly related to the floor area ratio. I mean, I can see that. It's
So
directly
you're-
related to it. If you let me finish without interrupting, please. And so the setback specifically does not allow, in open space, does not allow access roads on the open space, and it doesn't allow access roads on setbacks. And setbacks are specifically for the greening and vegetation. It does allow sidewalks, but sidewalks are 5 or 6 feet wide. They're not 10 feet wide, plus an additional 5 on either side, though those paving structures or those concrete structures, blocks, does allow grass to come through. And so this, I know last time, we read it, driveways, we read the bylaws, allowed in setbacks, the driveways, openings, sidewalks, walkways, screen mechanical equipment shall be permanent in the setback/buffer area. And some of the straw polls were, yeah, it sounds like it fits the bylaw. I don't see how can someone tell me how an access road, which is in this case for the fire department, I can appreciate that, fits the bylaw when it says, for open space, it says access roads are not allowed. So how is this fitting?
I'd like to respond to that, if I may.
Please.
Thank you.
Chair. I was very concerned about this also, because I remember when we did the rezoning, when town meeting voted on the rezoning, we had the hearings on the rezoning, keeping a 50-foot landscape setback was very important to the people who spoke at the hearing on the zoning. And however, the modifications that have been made to the original emergency access way, so that even the middle part that's 10 feet is permeable paving, and then you have these structures that allow grass to grow, and everything else is landscape with trees and bushes and grass and so forth. And also, another factor, I met with our police department about this, because they were concerned about the original proposal because it didn't seem, they were concerned about the actual access for the fire trucks. Where were they coming in? Were the driveways they were coming in on wide enough for the trucks and so forth? And that all was worked out. Worked out also with gates. On one end, off TV Place, a gate at the corner of Gould Street and Highland, only for emergency vehicles. Those gates will be kept shut. There will not be driveways. They're only for the occasional use of emergency vehicles. I don't think that occasional use for emergency vehicles violates these provisions here. And thus, and furthermore, I happened to, I was going out looking at the Coca-Cola site and the 140 Kendrick site, and up in that area there are two Bullfinch buildings. One's on 2nd Avenue and one's nearby, I forget the exact address. Beautifully landscaped. You know, we, in our plans, we pay a lot of attention to landscaping. Then the building gets built. Then 20 years later, the trees are all dead. That is not the case for the Bullfinch properties. They are kept up, the landscaping is just, you couldn't have it better. And that's what I think we'll have here. We will have high quality landscaping and it will be kept up. So I am satisfied with the 50-foot setback. I'm satisfied that it meets the bylaw.
In what way, I'm sorry, in what way, I mean,
in what way? All right, I'll go to that actual language.
I mean, if we want to give some flexibility
I'll go to
and so
that
forth,
actual
I can
language,
appreciate some aspects.
which says, all it says is driveway openings, sidewalks, walkways, and screened mechanical equipment shall be permitted in the buffer area.
Correct.
It doesn't say that an emergency access way will be permitted. Nevertheless, the emergency access way is necessary for public safety, and I think it's not an actual driveway because it's not available to the general public. It's not even available to the owners of the property and their tenants to use for access. It's only available to public service emergency vehicles on the occasional need for that.
What about in the open?
The landscaping, I think, is going to be sufficient, even though you have a certain amount that's permeable paving. And the permeable paving, you need something like that to have the running path, the walking path that they originally always proposed to have, was that kind of path going around, which is a municipal benefit. So I just want to say that I really cared about this, and I thought, wow, we're going to have to move those buildings back. And thus, all of these factors, the FAR, the building height, et cetera, all these special permits would be affected. But I want to make it clear that I'm satisfied with it. I would go along with these special permits. I don't see a problem. And I really thought hard about it. Okay.
What about, let me just clarify one thing. Okay, no, I can appreciate that. And I can appreciate the fact that I don't want to penalize a company, the fact that fire department's coming in. I can appreciate that fact. But we're also looking at this, also looking at this from an environmental standpoint as far as what do we have for green space. A permeable paver is not green space. It is a in essence, a blacktop. And so in the open space category, it says, may not be covered with building structures or of any kind, access streets, ways. It may not be covered with any type of access ways. That's what open space says. It may not have any type of access like that.
So
Hold on, so just look at that though. It says it cannot have anything like that on open space. It can't.
So which section of the,
what are you looking at?
About this
what would be 411.1, paragraph 4 maybe? I didn't print out the whole thing. It might be
411.1.
It might be 411.1, paragraph 4 maybe.
The footnote, D, I think is the one.
It's right here, D. This is the one I printed out. It's right there. And actually, it's this circle above, may not be covered.
Thank you.
Yeah, may not be covered.
Thank you.
That's it right there.
411, 1, 4. Oh, here it is, excuse me. Yes, I wasn't looking at that. A minimum of 25, shall be landscape, may not be covered with buildings or structures of any kind, access, streets, ways, etc. All right, no, you're right, and I wasn't reading from that part before, but I'm looking at my own handwriting in pencil in the margin. Emergency access, okay. That's my conclusion. Yeah, it's that paragraph.
So,
that's the really relevant paragraph, right?
It's 8:11. We have 4 minutes before our hearing. So, Artie, I'm gonna say that I just to be able to give Lee some direction, just in terms of a yes or no at this point. Artie, I'm gonna assume you're a yes for an FAR of 1.21.
Well, I mean, this is
just,
also...
at this point, just yes or no.
This is also based on a certain assumption of the parking not being reduced and so forth and so on, and us being fine with a waiver if the parking is reduced, keeping the FAR of 1.21. There's a lot of assumptions going on here.
So yes or no, please.
On the 1.21?
Yeah.
I think no.
Okay, I understand. That's good. That's helpful. Thank you. Natasha?
I say
Or-
yes.
yeah,
For
sorry.
me, it's yes.
Okay.
But I think what Artie's saying is that it's contingent on the parking, right?
That if the parking were to come down a floor and we waive an additional 108 parking spaces, you would not support the FAR at 1.21?
Well, Paul was concerned about them. You were even concerned about people parking on. People weighed this specifically. If we reduce the parking, people are going to be parking on the neighborhoods with the current building structure. That's what was stated. If we have to reduce the parking, and if we keep the building in its current footprint, then people are going to be parking in the neighborhoods. That's what was stated.
That's correct.
Well, that's our concern. We're not
That's our
saying it will
concern, right.
happen.
Right.
So I support the 1.21, but I want to understand the mitigation of the parking.
Understood, okay. So I support 1.21.
What are we
Jean?
looking at?
We're looking at the special permit. We're just taking a straw poll.
for floor
Area
ratio,
ratio of 1.1.
I'm looking at this memo. It says 1.25.
But that was adjusted
Yeah, it was adjusted down.
It was
to
adjusted,
1.2
right.
to 1.21.
Oh, and what document
It
should I
was-
be looking at?
Uh,
August 15. Wait a minute. I'm looking at the wrong page.
I had gone through this earlier. If we have that from their updated site plan, that,
Okay, so
and
this should be 1.21.
2.1, correct.
Okay. All right, answered.
Okay, so, Natasha is a yes on the floor area ratio of 1.21 with additional screening for, and other measures for the garage. I'm a yes. Artie's a no.
Are you looking at me?
Yes.
Oh,
Do you-
right. My statement about the 50-foot setback, I meant to apply it to all of the dimensional special permits and say I'm for all of them.
Okay, so Jean is a yes for an floor area ratio of 1.21. Paul?
I'm exactly at the same place with Natasha, which is that I'm a yes for the 1.21 with the caveat of if the parking garage is an issue, then we have to look at the whole thing to see whether we need to reduce the FAR in order to accommodate the parking.
Which would potentially impact the height and the number of stories of the north building and the south building.
Right. I mean, and the architects may be able to work things out so that,
Right.
you know, it works out that they still have an FAR of 1.21 because they redesign their interior space so that things work out for them. You know, so I'm okay with the 1.21, and if we're going to require them to take off a floor of the parking garage, then their architects are going to have to look at how they're going to accommodate their buildings in order to do it. It may or may not affect the FAR.
Thank you. So Lee, does that give you a little bit of clarity at this time or more confusion?
I think I have more clarity than when we started, so,
That's
I'm
progress.
okay.
But not enough clarity. No, just kidding.
So exactly. So I'm going to skip the rest of the dimensionals because I think that they relate to that outcome. But just to give Lee more clarity with respect to the restaurant use, do you support a special permit for restaurant use?
Yeah.
Jean?
Oh, I do too, yes.
So Paul is a yes, Jean is a yes, I'm a yes, Natasha?
Yes.
Yes.
And Artie is a yes.
Oh, you
We were yes. It's impressive. Artie,
That's progress.
Artie, are you I don't want to take up too much time because we've got another hearing and we're running a minute over here. Artie, do you support a single retail tenant special permit for up to between 5,750 and 10,000 square feet?
Yeah.
So Artie's a yes on that?
Yes.
Natasha's a yes, Adam is a yes, Jean
Yes.
is a yes, and Paul?
Is a yes.
Paul, do you support a special permit for the major project site plan?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
Natasha's a yes. Artie is a yes.
We should have started from the bottom up. Sorry.
And then there is a special permit for a deviation from the design requirements of a retaining wall. Artie, I'll start at you.
Yes, that's
Artie's
whatever
a
you,
yes.
whatever needed.
Yes.
Natasha's a yes. Adam's a yes. Jean?
Yes.
Jean is a yes. Paul is a yes. So we have, on a straw poll basis only, Lee, we have 5 affirmative votes, notions of support, informal votes, for a special permit for the restaurant use, the single retail up to 10,000 square feet, the major project site plan, the deviation for design requirements for retaining wall, and any other special permits for the project that may be required was requested, but we haven't identified any yet. So Lee, I'll come to you on that when we pick this up again. So if we have a little more time tonight, we'll tap into some more of these, but at this point, what I would like to do is turn to our hearing, our second hearing this evening, and would like to invite to the table Attorney George Ginta Jr. and Paul Bevilacqua as the developer, with respect to major project site plan review special permit number 2022-04 from BTE Development as petitioner to demolish 2 existing commercial buildings and construct a new mixed-use building with retail on the first floor, 3 retail units, and a total of 15 residential units, including 3 affordable housing units, between the second and third floors of the property, now located at 40 and 50 Central Avenue. Can I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we waive the reading of the notice.
Paul moves that we waive the reading of the notice of hearing, seconded by Artie. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll come to the vote. Paul Alpert?
Aye.
Artie Crocker? Natasha Spada? Jean McKnight?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We have we've waived the reading of the notice. George, I believe tonight we have, and Leah, Alex, I'm not sure if you see by Zoom from MDG, we should have Trevor O'Leary, Mariana Degatti, and Ben Carnicelli. Did I pronounce that right? Concelli?
Carnicelli.
Oh, Thank you very kindly.
No problem.
So who would like to start? George?
I'm still working on Junta, by the way. So.
Fortunately, my laptop doesn't sometimes I have to plug in order for it to wake up. So bear with me a minute. I figured there would be some unexpected hiccup.
There usually is.
As long as it's not my fault.
It's never your fault.
When I was talking with Alex about doing the technology here, I mentioned to her that the two prior times that I've tried doing presentations electronically in this room, neither of them went well, and we wound up not being able to use the electronic component. So.
And here you are?
I think those were ZBA though.
They were, and it was a few years back, and that was actually before before the public could get access to the Wi-Fi.
Do you guys have anything for signature now, or do you want to do it at the end?
Probably the end.
At the end, okay.
Thanks.
Hey, Paul, is that your house next to Trader Joe's?
It is, yeah.
What are you doing? It looks like you're ripping all the siding.
Oh, yeah, we're residing it, all new trim, new front porch, new everything.
Yeah, because you did a beautiful job on that when you first did it.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago now. Well,
The second renovation.
We both know it was
Like 20 years ago that...
was it was 20?
It was probably 30 that I bought it and then
Oh,
did some renovation, yeah.
No, really nice, yeah.
On Morton Street?
On
No,
West.
West Street.
yeah.
Right next to Trader Joe's parking lot, right on West. The last house on the left, right before you get to the parking lot entrance. It's right there.
On West?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
You know where West Street
I
is.
know where West Street is. But I'm trying to picture where a house is. Down the hill.
Up the hill, top of the hill where Trader Joe's is.
Yeah, right before the parking lot. Right at the intersection of Honeywell and West Street. Honeywell angles off. There's a park there. There's a...
Yeah.
I know, you're way in the other side of town. You don't know this stuff.
That's not fair. I lived at the
You
bottom
grew
of
up in
West
that
Street.
house.
What's that?
You grew up in that
Yeah,
house.
exactly.
Who grew up in that house?
You see, she's saying I did, because just by way of humor. But for many years I lived at the bottom of West Street, but I just...
Oh, really?
Yeah, on Central. I just can't suddenly picture...
No, it's a beautiful house. Detached garage, almost like a carriage house type of thing or something like that. It almost kind of looks like a carriage house.
Yeah, from the outside, yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
George, are you ready?
Ready to share screen?
Can you not? If not, I'll, it might need it marked on the
It's okay, it's perfectly fine.
Or is it allowing you to?
Let me see.
Are you in as a participant? Yes, he is.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Look at that.
All right.
Hey.
All right, now let's see if this works. So technology's great when it works, and the rest of the time, yeah. All right, so as indicated, this is an application for the properties at 40 and 50 Central Avenue, and actually with that I jumped in. I'm George Junta Jr., the attorney for the applicant. Paul Bevilacqua is the person behind the entity, BTE Development, with me this evening. So getting back to 40 and 50 Central Avenue. These are two properties located at the intersection of Central Avenue and Reservoir Street. Currently, right now, most people know this as sort of Pannella's Corner, or the Pannella's Market. It is actually two properties. One at 40 Central has a small sort of semi-derelict commercial building that I don't think has been used since the used car lot that used to be there left, but it's still there nonetheless, and you can see it on the existing condition site plan. And then on 50 Central is the two-story building where Pannella's is currently located on the first floor, and there's offices up on the second floor, and there's like a little bump out to get up to the second floor and a little bump out at the back. Together, the two properties consist of 32,058 square feet of land. There's 139, almost 140 feet of frontage on Central, and almost 197 feet of frontage on Reservoir. So the lot, the size, and the frontage conforms with the bylaw. There's no issue with that. I'm not really going to go into the existing buildings because the proposal is to knock down both of the existing buildings and basically do a complete overhaul of the site from top to bottom, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. The property is located in the neighborhood business district, and I'm not sure all the board members are really familiar with the neighborhood business district. It's kind of a funky commercial district we have in town. And I say funky because when you delve into the uses that are allowed in the district, especially the uses by right, general retail, for example, is not allowed. Only specific retail, like retail selling books, retail selling stationery, retail selling convenience items, and so on and so forth. So it's really, it's an odd kind of a district, and that may be part of why you've seen it sort of stagnate and not really change much over the years. The Pannella's neighborhood business district is probably the most developed and the most dynamic of the different neighborhood business districts in town. But even that area has not really changed a whole lot over the last 30, 40, 50 years. So as indicated, I'm going to demolish the two existing buildings and replace it with one new building. This is a rendering here. You can see looking sort of if you're across the street, the right street there is Reservoir and the left is Central. The new building will consist of 3 stories, a little over 20,000 square feet of space. It's proposed to have 3 commercial spaces on the first floor. They're roughly 700 square feet each. One's a little less, the other 2 a little bit more. Right now it's intended and expected that Pannella's Market will be one of the tenants in the first floor. So obviously they'll have to vacate when the building comes down, but then they'll go back into one of the tenant spaces, and we think they'll be a good fit with the overall design for the building, for the property and the mix of commercial and residential. Speaking of residential, we're proposing 15 residential units for the 2 stories above the first floor, the second and third floor. 15 total units, 3 of those units will be affordable. It's a mix.
George, man, I just want to clear, my brain's stuck on this because I love the whole thing going on. My brain's stuck on this. On one of the plans it says, with Pannella's Market, you know, it says 14 residential units and 1 affordable unit. It says it on one of the plans.
Yeah, so
what is that telling me?
So that's just a function of the way the bylaws structured in terms of there's a provision that provides for a requirement to have a certain number of affordable units, and then if you do affordable units, you can also sort of bump up. You get a +1 affordable and a +1 market, and that's why you see sort of the 14 +1 is because that +1 is the extra affordable unit.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's a total of 3 affordable units, 2 1-bedroom affordable units, 1 2-bedroom affordable unit. The units in the building are roughly half, so there's 8 2-bedroom units, 7 1-bedroom units, so it's roughly a 50-50 split. No 3-bedroom or above. So these are kind of smaller units, you know, aimed towards sort of a non-family kind of population. Right, professionals or maybe older people, or but basically they're not really geared towards families. The building, well actually let me turn to the site plan.
Condos or rentals?
We're actually debating which one, yeah.
Okay.
Because you're open to the idea of condominiums.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so you can see here, this is the site plan from the surveyors, and I'm actually gonna only show this for a minute because I think actually the landscape plan, which we'll get to in a bit, kind of gives you a better graphical idea. But just to point out, you know, you can kind of see here, this is the building, right? And it almost looks like there's a building within a building, and there's a reason for that. As you saw from the rendering, portions of the second floor and third floor actually overhang or jut out from the commercial space on the first floor, which is a really, you know, interesting, attractive look. It's a good way to keep some openness on the site and some flow and an interesting visual. And so you can see that sort of the building inside here, this is the commercial on the first floor, and then this is sort of the overhanging piece, right? And I want to point out what one sort of significant part is over here, you can see that the second and third floor overhangs above the driveway and some of the parking spaces that come in on this side here.
This strikes me as rather similar to a mixed-use project that we had on Dedham Avenue opposite the Unitarian Church with the same idea of the overhang.
Yes, yes, it takes some of the similar concept, although this one I think goes a little beyond that, because on that one I think it was just really mainly the driveway that went under, and we do have that piece on this side, but then on the other end of the building you can see it's sort of an overhanging of space above a sort of a walkway underneath and some of the parking spaces as well. All right, so let me, unless there's any questions on that, let me skip to the architectural. Okay. All right, so here we have the elevations, and it looks like the colors aren't coming through quite so well on this, but this piece here on the right is red brick. All right, I'm just going to talk about the colors here for a minute. This is red brick. Then there's like a charcoal gray, and then an off-white, almost like a concrete type color. So it's sort of three basic colors. I personally think that the design team did a brilliant job with this. I think the colors work well. Design review also thought that the colors worked well. It was a good fit. The brick ties into some of the other buildings in the neighborhood. As you know, I mean, the neighborhood's kind of a hodgepodge of all different things, but there are a few different brick buildings, so it kind of ties into that. And the colors generally in the neighborhood are a bit drab, so the overall color scheme ties in a little bit with that.
What's the material of the gray and white again? Can you remind me?
So this is batten, I believe, and then
It's a cement board substrate
Okay.
that's colored, yeah.
For the, and then the other one is brick, is that what you were saying?
Correct,
Right, the red.
the red is an actual brick, and then it's the cement substrate on
Okay.
the other two colors.
all right. So you can see here we've got the commercial on the first floor, right, recessed back underneath. Here's the that overhang for the driveway and the parking.
And that's facing,
So this is if you're looking at it sort of from from the central side. And then the one below is if you're looking at it kind of from the reservoir side.
Right.
To the right is reservoir, left is central.
All right, and here we have looking at it sort of from the back. Again, you can see this is sort of on the reservoir side of the back, right? And then the other one is if you've shifted a little bit more into the interior corner on the lot. And it's a little bit hard to see on these elevation drawings, but one of the interesting things that the design team came up with is there's a mix with respect to the balconies. The units on the sort of the front side of the building, on the street side, only have the Juliet balcony, so there's not an actual usable balcony. But on the back side, where you don't have that busy traffic, they actually have a balcony that can be used. All right, again, now here we have some 3D views to give you a little bit of a better idea of what it will look like graphically.
I saw from the design review comments that you said that the columns are concrete. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
Because in one of the renderings, it looked like it was the same material, the cementitious material, but
I think they just brought that color down to match, but it actually structurally has to be a concrete pier.
right. So is it just painted? I mean,
Yeah, well, it'll either be overlaid or painted.
All right, and now we just go back to the renderings. All right, so that's the one we've already seen. And here you see, looking at it from Reservoir Street, you can see how a very nice, sort of modern, very attractive building. All right, you can see the red brick with the charcoal, and then the off-white. I think the colors are a little better on these slides.
It almost looks like there'll be a lot more green space on this property than potentially exists already.
Oh yes. Well, right now, Guaranteed. Artie, I'm sure you know, there's like, the only green space is at the very back. It's basically all paved or gravel or, yeah. So this is, I have to say, this really, to me, when I was a kid, I grew up at the far end of Reservoir. I was quite familiar with this site, and I think.
Did you?
Yeah.
You mean going north on Reservoir?
If you go all the way up Reservoir, the very end, there's a little Reservoir Ave, just up the end. Like,
But if you take the Reservoir if you go on Central Ave, head to Newton, you take a left on the Reservoir?
Take a left, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going
all the way
north,
up to the end.
north on Reservoir, so
Yeah.
you're going north on Reservoir, oh, okay.
Yeah, so in fact, during the blizzard of '78, memories as a kid pulling a wagon down to get supplies down at Pannella's Market, because back then, Pannella's Market was a true market. It was a grocery, like a little grocery store, which has unfortunately long gone, but back then, yeah, you'd get the bread and the milk and so on. You just got to get the bread and the milk. All right, so so the building complies with the applicable dimensional and density requirements under special permits. So the planning board went to town meeting a few years back and amended the bylaw to specifically provide for this sort of a mixed-use development. And with it, there are certain special permits that can be granted, namely affecting floor area ratio, height, both in terms of dimensional and stories, as well as side yard setbacks. I'm just going to talk about those really quickly. Floor area ratio, the base floor area ratio in the district is 0.5. The special permit allows the planning board to grant up to 0.7. If you do not take into account the open space underneath the overhang, where the driveway is, then we're at 0.63, so we're actually below. Even if you take that into account, which I don't think you really should, but just, I like to cover all the bases, right? So even if you take it into account, we're still at 0.69, so we're still under the 0.7, so it's, still approvable. But so we have asked for that special permit. The building, as you can see, it's 3 stories. Technically, it's 39 feet high, but that's to the top point. The actual, most of the building, so the roof line here is actually 35 feet. So there's a small part on the interior that actually sticks up more, and that's 39 feet. But
what is that? So you're talking about on the roof surface?
Right.
The elevator.
I believe it's the elevator box.
The doghouse at the top of the elevator shaft. Yeah.
And you can't, like you can see from the area, you really can't see it from the street. You can only see it from
the backside.
Probably from the back. Yeah.
So you're saying it's 35 to where your cursor is now?
Yes. Yes.
Is the white part of the building that's 35 as well?
So this is a little high. This little architectural element is a little higher. It's not quite as high as 39. I actually don't have a height on that, but
But the average is less than.
But the highest point is 39, and under the special permit, the planning board can grant up to 40.
Right.
So we're under. So no matter how you slice it, we're under the maximum. Similarly, and then the board can authorize up to 3 stories. Under the base zoning only allows 2 stories. Then probably the most significant thing, and I want to go back to the architectural plan and go to there we go, the landscaping. All right. So this side of the property here is a residential district boundary. All right. The bylaw, and I think some board members are familiar with this, the bylaw has this funky.
Where the residential.
So it's on the right-hand side?
Right hand.
Yeah, I'm trying to move the cursor.
Hey, George,
See it.
is this property is also taking up the whole plot where the cars used to be
Yes.
parked, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, it's both pieces,
Yeah.
the entirety, right. Right, so some board members I know are familiar with the fact we've got this clunky piece of the bylaw that says when you're a commercial and you're next to a residential, you can't do anything pretty much within 50 feet. Which has never made any logical sense to me, and the board has certainly over the years sort of chipped away at that with different things. And in fact, when they did the zoning to allow this mixed-use type development, the zoning was changed to include a provision for a special permit to reduce that 50 feet down to 20 feet. Now we're actually.
By the way, George, on some other projects. I think I was doing this research for 1688 Central Avenue, reading some land court cases, and some of the other towns, it's a 100-foot buffer if it borders the residential. So our 50 feet is actually pretty, compared to some other towns.
Well, well, literally, we might be less, but I think if Needham imposed 100, somewhere between a quarter and a half of the commercial might be rendered non-usable.
Yeah, but-
All right, so anyway, so this is supposed to be 50 feet under the base zoning. Planning board can waive it down to 20. We're at 27.2, so we're basically, say, call it 27 feet to the building here.
And George, I happened to go out and drive around there today, just to get a look at it. There's a very steep slope on that side that separates, oh no, the steep slope is along Reservoir Street.
Yeah,
Yep,
and I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Right, yeah, no, on that side, on the central side, it's actually pretty darn flat all throughout. So we're 27 feet, and we're proposing to do a good substantial landscaped area in here, with landscaping that complies with the requirements of the bylaw, and the most notable requirement is that the trees, when planted, or basically the screening has to be at least 10 feet high right off the gate. So,
George, you were saying, I'm sorry, I just want to understand the distance, because, so it's 24 feet, but that green area, the width of that green area is 20 feet to 25 feet. I mean, the green area, what's that, at least the plan I'm showing, what's the total distance from the building structure to the red lot line?
from the building to the red lot line, and let me see if I can blow it up here. Look at
It
that.
looks like it's going on
Technology's working.
to 45 to
See,
48
you can see
feet, or
right
50,
there.
or 50 feet or plus,
27.2 at the closest point, and it's 27.4 up
to the
here.
parking. That's
No,
it.
this is to the building,
Oh, that's right. Oh, God, that's right.
because this is where the building overhangs.
Oh, God,
the-
that's right. There's parking under the building right there.
That's right,
That's
yep.
That's what the
But then
parking.
it gets wider by
Yeah,
another
that's right.
10 feet.
It gets wider up here, right.
As you
And
get
it-
closer.
Right,
That's right. Yeah,
yep.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Is there a building in the property next door? I can't remember right
It's a
now.
house.
There's a small house.
It's a red
Yes.
house or something. I think it's a red house or something like that.
Are you a butter?
Oh, I'm glad you're
That's
here.
a nice buffer there, 22, 27 feet, that looks fine with me if that's what they're proposing. Originally, I thought it was, there was the breezeway and the 2 floors above, we're gonna be right on top of it.
Mark can't pick up anything he's saying,
Okay.
so anything, we just have to use the mic.
I won't say it.
Okay.
No, I just had to.
No, that,
When we come to public comment, we'll welcome you up to the table.
To the
Thank
mic.
you.
All right, so as one part of this landscaped area along the side, we're envisioning maybe some garden space here for the residents that would be in the units. So, trying to provide outdoor, space so that it's not, sort of straight urban living, that there's like a garden area that they can keep gardens out there. I don't know if anybody will, but if they're so inclined, there's a space for that, and that'll work well with the landscape along the side. In addition, we've got a nice wide landscaped area in the front, and I know this is supposed to be a lawn area, and I know Design Review made comments about using some different choices for that, and we're fine with their comments. In fact, we're fine with all their comments generally, but specifically, they had some good comments with respect to vegetation and using alternate species that were maybe easier maintenance and maybe a little more hardy. In the front of the building here on the Reservoir Street side, on this plan, it's mislabeled as a deck, but this is actually a patio. On the, I think on the other architectural drawings and the site plan, I think it calls it a patio. Basically, the intention here is to have an outdoor area that can be used for seating for the residents, like if they want to put chairs and tables out there and go sit outside, if they want to take food down and whatever. As a side note, this is one of the quirks of this district, restaurants are not allowed at all. So you can do food retail, you can do takeout accessory to a food retail, but you can't have a restaurant. If in the future that changes, hopefully that will change at some point, if a restaurant were to go into the building, this space could also be used potentially for outdoor seating. So we're trying to anticipate both what the residents might want and also potential commercial years down the road. We continue, we've got trees on the Central Ave side, you can see in the Reservoir Ave side as well, coming down along, and then also there's some existing trees along the back side, and then this, Gene, is where the slope is on that reservoir side, and it's steep in some spots, it's not so steep in others, but there is a definite slope there, and in fact we are proposing, we have a retaining wall that's no more than 4 feet in height along that line to basically deal with that grade, because we're up above it. And there's still a little landscaped area in between the wall and then where the parking is as well, or where the driveway is, because there's no parking on that side. So, and speaking of parking, so we have 28 total spaces on site, and then we're also proposing to add 6 spaces on Reservoir Ave. I don't know if you can see the cursor here, but they're along, there's basically 4 there and then 2 down here. And that basically, we came up with that in connection with comments from building and from engineering. We were having some discussions before we got to our formal filing. And we thought that was made a lot of sense, was a great idea, a good way to create some extra parking, and also was a good way to provide parking that could serve the Pannella's market use. Because if you're familiar with that area at all, if you're familiar with Pannella's market, you know that they're really, their busiest time is lunch, and they have a lot of people that basically pull up, go in, get their food, go out and leave. So it's kind of a quick thing, and having those spaces will provide for some good parking for that without necessarily having to have people come into the lot. It'll maybe keep them, on the street there.
Have you already determined that the Pannella's Market will be at that end of the building, or is that still up in the air as to?
Still up in the air.
So, yeah.
Okay. Because they may not want to park there if Pannella's Market is on the Central Avenue side. They may want to pull in and park in one of the spaces
Exactly.
that's behind.
Are these spaces to be built by the developer within the public way?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So we'll obviously have to coordinate with engineering and selectmen to do that. But yes, these are actually in the public way. And as I said, I mean, we didn't consider it at first until we had some discussions with engineering, and engineering was receptive to it, and basically, had engineering not given us some indications that they were open to it, we wouldn't have developed that at all. All right, so we've got 28 spaces on site, 6 spaces proposed along the side, right? We can't technically count the 6 spaces on the side per the bylaw, so I'm not going to count them in calculations. When you run the numbers per the bylaw as to what number of spaces the building requires, if you do it, I'm going to do it 2 ways. First, without Pannella's, which I'll explain in a minute. If you do it assuming retail or professional office or other office and the downstairs commercial spaces with the 15 units above, you wind up with a total parking demand of 31 spaces. 28 spaces on site, 31 spaces, we're only shy of 3 spaces. But then there's 6 spaces on the street. If you add Pannella's into the mix, it bumps up to 41 spaces, because we have this provision in the bylaw that says a takeout food station requires 10 parking spaces. With maybe 1 or 2 notable exceptions, I have never understood where that number came from and why it's in there. All the restaurants I've worked with, there was only 1 restaurant that really came up to that level, but that's what the bylaw says, so we have to do the numbers. So technically with Pannella's, it's 41 spaces. We have 28, that means we need a waiver of 13 parking spaces. But we've got 6 in the street, so it's actually a little...
Would any of the parking spaces on the premises, are they going to be marked essentially reserved? Like for this tenant, that tenant, how would they be marked?
Yeah, so the plan is not to reserve them, and one of the reasons we think the parking actually works is because even though things are a little different right now, because we're still sort of coming out of COVID, if you go back to pre-COVID, on buildings that were mixed use, you have at least some significant portion of the residents would get in their cars and drive and go to work. So during the day, when the commercial is busiest, there's available spaces. And then at night, when the commercial is closed, the residents come back and they park in the spaces. So it allows for the maximum utility of use for the spaces.
Would they be given, would each apartment be given, let's say, quote, given 2 spaces, for example?
No, it would be first come, first served.
That's how it's going to be allocated.
Right.
In general.
That's the plan because that's how the parking really kind of works in order to maximize the use of the parking. Because once you start, I mean, it's nice, in a perfect world, it'd be great if everybody has 2 spaces and commercial has their spaces, but now, now you're talking about all these extra spaces, and Artie, I know you weren't on the board when we did the Honeywell Street project, but we actually had a situation where, because of the design, they had more spaces than they needed, and there was some push to maybe cut back some of the spaces. So there is this thing, and I know you're sensitive to open space, right? So this thing about, if you want to try and minimize your concrete, your asphalt, whatever, right? You want to try and maximize your use of that. So the best way to maximize the use of that is have that space get used by multiple people, and then you don't have to.
Well, one thing that's nice is the fact this is right on public transportation.
You knew exactly what was going to come up next.
There.
That's right.
Public transportation.
So there is an MBTA bus line that actually stops right there, and it's the bus line that connects to the commuter rail in Needham, and it connects to the Highland, Newton Highlands T-stop, and it also connects, I think, to the Worcester line in Newtonville.
It also goes to it goes all the way to Watertown, I think, technically.
So this location is fantastic for transit link, and I know the committee is still working on the overall housing plan, but this is exactly, I think, the sort of project that was envisioned. And so speaking of transit links and traffic, we also had a traffic study done, and I know engineering has not yet reviewed that, but I will, but I know you all have it, and I'll just highlight that the traffic study, basically when they did their analysis, the projected traffic impact from this project versus a no-build condition, if nothing were to happen, it's an increase of anywhere from 0.7 to 1%. So it is a very minor, very insignificant increase in terms of projected traffic from this project. So this isn't likely to have any significant impact.
Is that, remind me, is that based on full occupancy of the Pannella's market and then the full occupancy of the office above?
Yes, it's basically assuming all the full use of the building, right, projected with the uses for the building.
Is parking allowed on Central Avenue now?
In certain spots of Central, I believe it is, but I don't believe it, I don't think it is.
Next to this property?
I don't think it is there.
Next to this property, no, because there's a bus stop there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, and that section, I think actually from this intersection down to the bridge.
Yeah, but they won't be parking, nobody will be parking down near the bridge in order to walk back up here.
Right.
So that's not why I'm asking, I'm asking about, I'm concerned about parking because I'm running the numbers in my own head, saying, 15 units, and I know there's a break on the affordable housing, but it's 1.5 spaces per unit, and I think that's more than fair because you have to allow for visitor parking, not just the residential parking. They're going to have visitors. So that's 23 spaces right there. 21, 23 spaces. And then if you're going to have 3 commercial units, each one of which will have generously 2 employees who might be driving there and parking, so that's 6 more spaces. So you now have 29 spaces that you're using.
With a capacity.
And you've got fewer than that number of spaces.
But the 6 on site.
Yeah, but the 6 on site they're saying is good because you're going, the 6 on site takes care of
the commercial.
You mean off-site?
The 6 on Reservoir Street.
Yeah.
That takes care of the takeout.
The customers.
Yeah.
But not the employees.
But not the employees.
And then there's a competition of spots between residents and the employees.
Right.
Although these businesses, the commercial plate is roughly an average of 700 square feet per unit. So a place like Pannella's would probably have 2 employees, maybe more.
Might be 3 because they do 3.
Right, exactly. But I'd be curious what the other businesses would potentially be, but that is, Paul is right, and it was my question too. One of them is, even though it's an innovative use.
For the record, he said Paul is right.
That in the
deletion Paul, I'm sorry.
But there's also public transit, so maybe there's people we would encourage people to take public transit there as well.
That's true, but
there as well, so.
It's not that common for, even though there's a bus, how frequently it goes, and they're saying that these are going to be, not going to be families, which reduces the parking demand, but yet if there are people that are kind of downsizing, right, that are moving into these types of units or moving from another location, it's not it's a lateral move, they will have parking needs because they'll have to get to the grocery store, carry bags of groceries, you know, whether they go to Trader Joe's or whether they go elsewhere, and some of that's not as convenient on a bus. So there still is a pragmatic demand for parking, and there's not a lot of capacity when you factor in, as Paul said, you know, employee parking. You know, if these people are retirees, they're not leaving in the, like you said, George, to go to their office because they're retired from that. So there is, you know, very strong potential for
competition for the park.
yeah, exactly.
Is there more parking on Reservoir Street?
There, I believe there's a little bit of parking on Reservoir going south, but I know for a fact there is more on-street parking going north, yeah. Because I actually used to park there. When I go to Hemlock Gorge sometimes, I'd park there and then walk to the aqueduct. Yeah. Yeah, so there is on-street parking available in the area, and I guess, you know, it will depend significantly on what commercial tenants actually go into the other spaces. And if you look at the Pannella's use, really, you know, they get a little bit of activity in the morning, but their big thing is they get a lunchtime sort of rush, and then that's it really. I mean, they have, like, the middle of the day is their busy time, and then they're not busy otherwise. So, you know, ideally, Paul will want to have a blend of tenants in there that will complement well parking-wise, sort of like, if you remember the building at 225 Highland, where we had different users at different times, and it worked really well because, again, this was this concept of you maximize your use of spaces because everybody uses the same space at different times. But, you know, this being a quirky district, we really don't know for sure what we're going to get for tenants in there. You know, a lot of things that are sort of high generators probably can't go in there. I mean, like, you can't have a nail salon, you can't have a hair salon. You know, there's a lot of things that can't go in there. So if you look at the uses in the bylaw, they tend to be on the lower end of sort of, I think, activity, which I think is part of why it was done that way in the first place. But
and I think you said that you would have indoor storage for bicycles as well as just a bike rack.
so that was actually, that was a recommendation of the traffic engineer. He recommended indoor. We don't have any shown. We have we have identified an area where we can create indoor storage for the bicycles.
Good. Being a person who lives in a condominium and has a bicycle, indoor storage is very important.
Yeah. And there was already a good bike rack on the outside, but we after the traffic engineer's recommendation, we
and it's a good argument for saying your tenants don't need, you know, families don't need two bikes, you know, two cars. You know,
right.
If you have indoor storage for bicycles, it's a big help.
Right.
I agree with you. I have a quick question. Did you ever consider putting parking underground to have more usable space on the?
Yeah, I don't see any underground level at all in this building. Is that right?
So there's two elements to that. The first is sort of what you would probably expect is the economics of it, to actually do underground structured parking in this site. The cost is pretty high, and in what you get in return, the number of few extra spaces you pick up isn't necessarily worth that. But beyond that, the bylaw doesn't allow it.
Doesn't?
So original design.
Yeah, the bylaw actually treats underground parking in this location as included in the floor area ratio.
Oh, does it?
So this is another one of these things that in the bylaw it's been getting addressed sort of district by district, but it has not been addressed on a town-wide thing. So in this district, if you do underground parking, it counts for your floor area ratio.
That's interesting.
But if the
Yes.
bylaw changed, would you consider it? I'm just throwing it out there.
After the building's built. So this was part of, you know, we looked at that, and part of it was, well, if there was a potential for something going to town meeting, and it wouldn't be until the spring town meeting, and we didn't have the luxury necessarily of waiting. So we also evaluated, that's where we then started looking, okay, well, can we do a design that takes into account the possibility, and maybe we can, you know, sort of hold off on the construction and maybe try and get an approval and then revise it. But when we started looking at the cost then of, you know, well, what are we really looking at for costs and what do we gain? We didn't gain enough spaces to really make it worth it. Yeah. But yeah, that was one of our first things we looked at. We thought about was doing, you know, because you do have, especially on that backside, you get a little bit of a grade differential, but then on that also creates some problems.
Well, we're here for an earlier conversation. We're talking about parking garages. Not a parking garage.
Again, not allowed in this district. This is actually a pretty constraining district. I mean, there's really I mean, even the uses, it wasn't until not that long ago that you couldn't even have office uses in this district. You had to jump through hoops and try and say you had to substitute an office use for a pre-existing non-conforming. Fortunately, that was changed, which sort of was a little bit of a pressure relief in a way that allowed some changeover. But there were a couple of people who had spaces that they couldn't tenant because they couldn't get the uses in to match the narrow confines of the bylaw. All right, so I think I know this will have to be continued over so engineering can comment, because I know you haven't received their comments generally, and they haven't commented on the traffic study either. So I think for tonight, I think you now understand, I think, what the project is about, what we're trying to do, and what we're proposing.
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jean.
Oh, the chair should recognize I didn't mean to just speak out. If you want us to have an opportunity to comment, you just...
I will. I appreciate that. For the record, you're right. I just wanted to make sure that we know that we're outstanding comments from our town engineer and from the police department. I have some other comments myself, but Jean, you seem pretty gung-ho on this, and then Artie will come to you after.
And also, of course, we do have comments you want to acknowledge from departments. But I think this is wonderful. I mean, we've been hoping for this kind of development. It is a very, very good location. Just driving through there today, some of the commercial buildings are very shabby. But you're right near Hemlock Gorge, that beautiful park. I mean, you're right near opportunities for various shopping in Newton, and then going in the other direction to Needham Street and Highland Avenue, and it's just a terrific location. And you're making absolutely wonderful use of the site. I really, really hope this is a successful project. And other than some of the design review board comments of some changes in the landscaping, which you say you're pleased to go along with, I don't have anything, any questions or comments other than I like it.
Well, you go to Artie. You were pretty excited to jump in.
Super excited, yeah. Artie, you're always super excited. You know that. Thanks, Paul. A couple of questions. Just to verify, what's the landscaping along the residential side to the right? What's going to be planted there? Just to have you state.
So you're talking about the buffer,
yeah.
So that is that's a mix of, I believe, trees and shrubs in there, right? And then obviously ground cover, and then there's the community planting area down in this end, down in here.
I think, and then just one other thing, and George, you probably know what it is because you know my business when I'm in. The question is solar. You think because the roof there's going to be plenty of space on the roof, and there's going to be a common meter, whether no matter what, even if the tenants all have their own meter, if it's rentals, the meters, there's going to be a common meter in the building, which is going to have a fairly substantial load. I don't know what it's going to be right now. Obviously, at some point you'd want to know what that is. Have you even considered solar? Because it will be a massive return on investment for yourself if you're the owner of the building. Have you thought about that?
We have, and we plan on doing solar. And in fact, George, I don't know if you pointed out earlier, but we do have electric car charging stations designed in this as well.
Oh, where are those?
Those are on the lower side. Where are we?
I think of the this.
Yep, right there on that wall.
Correct. Yeah. I think, Trevor, we've got four designed in with capacity.
So it's each of the spaces that are underneath that overhang along the wall will be electric vehicle ready. So we'll have charging ready for dual handles for each of those spaces.
Well, but just to be clear, you mean that you can charge 4 vehicles simultaneously?
It would be, it's more than that. So you're saying each space, Trevor?
Each space, yep. So that's under the covered area. So if you go, I think, to our site plan, you can see where we've notated it out.
That's right here, we'll show you covered.
So how many cars can you charge at once?
4. Sounds like 4.
That's what I asked, and then they said no, there's more than that.
Sounds like 4.
Trevor, total cars able to be charged?
So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 cars.
Okay. Oh.
Trevor, you've got it here on the.
1, 2, 3.
It says 9.
Four
four.
charges and each
So
one has
it's 8,
two.
there's 8 right, there's 8 cars right there being charged, there's 8 right there.
Yeah, so the intention is that each of those EV-ready marks here would be able to charge the 2 adjacent spaces on either side of it.
So there's 8 there, are there EV on the other covered area to the east?
We have not put any at this moment.
Okay. But you said you're planning to put solar, or you're making it solar ready, because they're 2 different things?
Planning on solar.
Okay, good.
Is that allowed in the bylaw now, or don't you want to put it in your plan so it gets all approved at once?
A special permit?
So I believe as long as it's not a farm or not doesn't go above the height, it's basically part of the building, so it doesn't require any additional special relief or anything like that. If we had like a solar array, we were basically doing like a solar farm, that's a whole separate thing, and that does have to get approved. Not sure that you could even do that in this district.
Well, this solar would be less in height than any mechanical up there.
Right.
It could be 7 inches, it could be 12.
Right.
Depending on the pitch, it's easily going to be less than mechanical.
Yeah, I don't think
And
you'd see
it's
anything
in
from the
essence, it's a mechanical.
And it would be set back 12 inches.
Oh, you'd never see it. You'd never see it. You'd never see it. You're never going to see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I only know, we
Yeah, there's regulations set back
140
anyway.
Kendrick, which is a big commercial building, and they're putting solar on, and they have to come before us and get a special permit for it, so I just was concerned whether that was necessary.
Do you have any other comments?
No, that's it. No, I mean, I love the project. There would be, I know we have some concerns in parking, trying to figure out a way to make this happen like this, because it's a fabulous project, perfect location for something like this. The fact that you're putting 3 affordable housing units in, 3 affordable units, excuse me, in this, applaud you. Thank you. Yeah.
Natasha?
So I agree with what Gene and Artie has said. It's a great project. We're so excited to have 3 affordable units. It seems pretty equitable. One of my questions was sustainability. And I know you have potential for the bikes. That would be great. Inside also the solar. Any other sustainable features that you have?
Like recharge?
Well, not just in general. I mean, is it all electrified? Is it, you know?
We are planning on all electric for the all of the units actually.
And but you're not doing lead. You're not doing fit. Well, you're not doing anything.
We're not doing lead.
Yeah. Okay. And then in general, the parking I asked already. My other comment was just in general for team. So I'm on Nuari, just for the team. Did you think about equity in the team? So do you have any women or minority businesses that worked on the project?
In fact, the architectural firm is owned by a woman or co-owner.
Oh, that's great. So that's it. I think it's a great project. We're really excited. It's a great location. So we hope it's successful.
Thank you.
That was it.
Paul? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of things. First of all, I do like the project. I am concerned about the parking, as I've already expressed. So in that vein, the health department, you've seen the memo from the health department. If a retail food establishment is approved, sufficient space must be made in the parking lot for both a solid waste trash dumpster and a separate recycling dumpster. And these dumpsters must be placed in an easily accessible area outside of the new facility, close to the food establishment. Now I notice that you've got the dumpster in the lower corner of the lot. And
Yeah, it's actually 2 dumpsters.
well, it's one dumpster area. When I saw 2 dumpsters, I figured probably one was recycling and one was trash. And so I'm concerned that dumpster that's there, which actually I assume is mostly going to be used by the residents, is not going to meet the requirements for Pannella Market for the health department's requirement that there be a dumpster close to the food establishment. If Pannella's Market is being considered a food establishment by the Department of Health, they need to see a dumpster that's probably going to be closer. I'm basically asking you to work with the health department to make sure that the dumpster requirements for Pannella's, you may lose a parking space for what they require to have another dumpster location for Pannella's Market.
Right. It is possible. That is something, we're aware of that. We realize we may need to do that. You know, I would hope that we, that at the very least, we don't have to change the location, because putting, you know, really right now it makes the most sense putting the dumpsters in that location, especially considering it's a mixed-use residential building. I mean, really the building is more residential than it is commercial.
Right.
And even the Pannella's use is a relatively small space, you know, so I really would hope that at least the location is something that they would work with. And we'll certainly work with them. And if
I'm just questioning whether we may need to have you work with them and get back to us before we finalize.
Yeah. Well, we can certainly reach out to them, where the hearing will be continued. We can, between now and the next meeting, we can have a conversation with them.
If you needed to add another one, could you just extend the traffic enclosure with your the radius of the
Would the driveway still work?
Would the driveway still work if you had to extend it a little bit?
I'm not sure if it will, but that was one of my ideas to look at, was to extend it that way and maybe cheat it back a little bit as well. And I hate to lose the landscaping bit, but you really can't see that because it's behind the dumpsters anyway. So I'm not sure.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
You know, so if you cheat it sort of, maybe if 60% one side and 40% the other.
Yeah.
Paul, do you have other comments?
So my other comment is for you, George, because this is really technical, legal stuff here. The internet is a wondrous and a dangerous thing, George. Because I went online and I looked at the registry website and discovered that the two trusts that purportedly own these properties, and there's a question about, well, it's not a question. I mean, there was a screw up, and there's an estate involved on 40 Central Avenue, so there's actually a third entity. Those trusts were actually recorded in full at the registry, so I was able to actually read the trusts, and the VP Realty Trust, by its terms, has terminated. And so the true owners from the VP Realty Trust are the children of Edward and Virginia.
Right.
But it looks like the children of Edward and Virginia are Doug and Jean.
Yes, they are.
So we just need to have them signed maybe individually as well as...
As opposed as trustees?
As opposed as trustees, and also as personal reps of Edward's estate, because Edward's estate owns half of 40.
Well, so I'm not sure that the estate actually does now, and so I know it's interesting that you found that, because there was, we're devolved into some title law here for it. So there's a deed that was done, and the deed botched.
Yes.
The description.
The deed had the wrong parcel completely.
Right. However, if I remember correctly now, because it's been at least over a month since I looked at this, the description was wrong, but the title reference was correct. So it's a question.
No, the title reference wasn't correct.
It was. I have to go back now. I have to go back and look at it. But it was sufficiently enough that one title company basically said they didn't have an issue with it and they would issue clean.
Yeah, that's on that side. I'm talking about our requirement that the landowner consent to the application. So I want to make sure that we have the proper landowners in our file consenting to the application.
Right.
So that's got, you guys are gonna work out,
Right. So,
because Paul's lawyers are gonna make sure, and Paul's title company
Right.
is gonna make sure that he's got good title. That's fine. They'll work it out for the registry side.
Right, but I do think if you sort of carry it all the way through, right? So Ed's estate would have gone to his deceased wife and their 2 kids, Jeannie and...
Well, it went into a trust, so, for which we don't know what the terms of those trusts are.
All right, so all of it, so I have seen the trust. So it all flows into Jeannie and Doug.
Jeannie and Doug are gonna sign individually and as, all of their hats. Then we get to Michael's side, where that was left into separate trusts for each of the surviving children, and each of them had a power of appointment to say, I want the property in my trust vested in me. And there was a predeceased daughter, and the trust says that the predeceased daughter's children, and it looks like she was only survived by 1 child, went into trust, and that trust terminated when the youngest of her children reached 25, and it's clear that he's over 25. So I'd be happy if we had something in our file that was signed by all of Michael and Helen's children in their individual capacities, consenting to this application.
Anything else, Paul?
Isn't that enough?
It's a good shopping list.
So I'll have to say, so that second issue, this is the first time that that's come up.
Yeah.
That wasn't flagged by, there were 2 title exams done, and that wasn't flagged by either of those examiners in any capacity or even hinted at. The first issue was flagged, that one came up, so I was aware of that. So I'll have to take a look at that and see, certainly I can make a request. So, obviously we
do need to have, this was mentioned by the building commissioner in his letter, but even I was gonna raise it if he didn't. We do need to have these lots combined.
Oh, right.
But that's, I would
that's
think...
just a simple A&R
I would think that that's easy to do. You do the survey, combine the lots, and then the deed into Paul's entity.
Right. And in fact, we've...
References that plan.
Right, and there's been other projects, the Oak Street project, of famous or infamous, right? That one was, I think, had a consolidation, that it was multiple lots. There were 2 different properties that we had to consolidate.
Yeah.
And part of the requirement in the decision was that the consolidation plan be recorded prior to, I think, a building permit being issued.
A building permit is how we generally do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's very, that's a very, it's come up a few times before.
But I would think the building permit won't issue until after Paul owns the property anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Be thankful that it's not registered land.
Oh, yes.
We've had the requirement here that lots be combined, and they were registered.
Yes. We've had some issues with other registered land.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'm done, thanks.
Very good. I have a few general comments, some specific comments. I like the personal aesthetic of the project, the property. I like the mix of materials, which I'm learning from my esteemed colleague, in how to break up massing of a building. I thought that was intentional. I think that the appearance of it shows. I'm learning from my other esteemed colleague, from Jean, how effective landscaping can be incorporated into the flow of the project, and I think this is a good example of it. I like the idea of mixed use in this particular area. I think that you're coming up to as best as you could potentially get with 15 units. That you've done 12.5%, which 3 units achieve the affordable housing goal, which is helpful for the town. I think creating some additional on-street parking on Reservoir Street is a municipal directly for the site, but also potentially for other, for the municipality as a whole. And and I like the project very much. I don't have buts here. I do want to ask some questions that have not already been asked and point some things out from that my colleagues haven't. You have on the site plan at SP01, you have a total of 3 accessible parking spaces, 2 of which are in very close proximity to the building. The third one is near the exit or entrance to Central Avenue. So I would encourage you, if possible, to bring that other parking spot and make it more accessible to the building itself. So this is the...
It is accessible to the front entrance to the apartment, though. The front entrance to the apartment
is right here?
Yes.
And this will be to the rear entrance, you're saying?
No, so you're talking, Adam, are you talking about this spot right up in here?
Yes, correct.
Right, so the main door to the residential is right here.
So would it make sense to have the other 2 spots accessible from that point as well? I'm just thinking about a couple of things.
Where are the other 2 spots?
The other 2 spots are here.
Down there.
Where's your cursor, George?
And where?
You see it?
And this is the other
And the
3rd
back
spot.
entrance?
Is there a back entrance? But where's the elevator would be the
The elevator is
question.
near those two other handicap spots. That's where the elevator is.
Right.
It's near the back of that.
So there's a back entrance here and a front entrance here.
And where's the elevator?
So the elevator's here.
It's there.
Yeah.
So we don't have handicapped spots near the entrances to the retail.
Correct.
Well, right, because there's no spots. Well, and I guess maybe we could swap out and put one over here.
I just encourage you to give that some greater thought to promote the greatest accessibility to the site. The other, I was curious about the energy efficiency that you're intending for the building, and it sounds like you're intending to do solar. Natasha had asked, are you going to do LEED certified or WELL certified? And your response to that was no. Are there other aspects of energy efficiency that you're looking to include in the construction of the building?
Well, I think that the commercial code is a relatively strict insulation values that we have to adhere to. I think that code alone is a pretty tight structure. So as you probably know, to go for LEED is just an entirely different animal.
With a different cost base.
Oh yeah, yep. And we were not planning on that.
And LEED by itself doesn't necessarily change anything. It probably would, but LEED by itself doesn't necessarily create a big change of what you're going to do. It's just getting it certified.
Well,
No.
you're
It has
actually...
other requirements.
Yeah, it's the methods of how you insulate the structure and the structure itself.
Right, but we have the stretch code, we have other things that are, I guess the question that I had was also asking is, you're saying you're electrifying the building, so you're not using fossil fuels necessarily, right?
That's the plan.
And then just having like maybe recycled and renewable materials or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be LEED, but just making it as sustainable as possible. Is that what you were getting at? Okay.
That's right. Thank you. The traffic demand report says that it's comprehensive. I wouldn't quite say, but it consists of bike storage and an information pack. That in itself doesn't strike me as a comprehensive traffic demand program. I am concerned about the parking demand and capacity, as with Paul. I'm mindful of the fact that it is on a bus route, but I'm curious what the demographics are, either if it's a condo for a sale or for rentals. And in fact, we may market a building in a certain way, and we may actually have different people apply or buy. So, there's only certain things that we can do for restrictions, yet, I'm not sure how much of the bus is going to be utilized based on the bus's schedule and the physical demands that someone would have if they're going to go to a grocery store. Some do, certainly. I used to go with my grandmother in Sydney, Nova Scotia and take the bus because it was like a joyride, but that's how we would get our groceries. That's what we needed to do. But I'm not sure at this site what else we can do, but I think that parking is a concern, and traffic demand management and use of public transportation is a concern. The other comment that I had was where the trash is currently proposed. What is I'd like to know, and you may not have it now, that's fine, but at our next hearing, I'd like you to tell me what the distance is from the trash and recycling enclosure to the closest house.
To the actual house.
Closest house?
Yes.
I mean, nearby house.
Correct.
Yeah.
To the closest residential house. And the reason that comes up is because we've had complaints in other areas on off Highland Avenue in that residential enclave.
Panera Bread, there's an issue.
Exactly, where where there were because there's foodstuffs and other materials, and it's by a dense residential neighborhood, that the trash was actually producing and causing pest problems. We have, by our health department, a requirement that during demolition and during construction there'll be a pest control service. I would like to condition that post as a condition, Lee, of our special permit. I'd like to require that that there's an ongoing pest management program in place, particularly if there's going to be any food business on site.
70 feet.
I don't know if there have been complaints already, because Pannella's has a food business with the neighborhood, but I am mindful of it, and I want to make sure that we're being proactive as best as we can.
Yeah, I believe that on the Reservoir Street side, there's no residential. That's all commercial.
And there's this steep slope separating it.
Yeah, and on the residential side, on Central Avenue, we have the next door neighbor.
Right.
Which may be able to.
So hold on. Just, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, but we're going to get there.
We will come to you.
We should get there soon.
But I appreciate that. I just wanted to also, before we do that.
From the house, it's not right on it,
So we'll come back to the gentleman, a resident of Butter, and we'll come back to him in a moment. So for the record, we've received the following comments. Lee and Alex, if you could keep a keen eye out, because I may have missed something. We have an email from our fire chief dated November 9 saying he had no issues with the project. We had an email dated October 26th from our assistant public health director with their ordinary comments, which included that any food service will require a food permit plan review, also to the terms that Paul referenced earlier about proper additional requirements for dumpsters and a grease trap or grease containment, pest control during demolition in all phases of construction, and also potentially any asbestos sampling requirements. And then from the Design Review Board, by memo dated November the 7th, they're requesting you to install some additional markings for the compact cars. You obviously saw that, you're nodding, so you understand what I'm referring to. Landscape changes to the rear seating area, review the amount of lawn space, and to mix in additional plantings, which I recall you stated earlier that you intend to do, and that the Design Review Board approve the design plan and the lighting plan. We are outstanding with our traffic engineer and with our police department, and although we'll continue the hearing, I would at this time like to open this to public comment.
Oh, there's a building department letter.
No, I did not.
Yes, right here.
Thank you very much.
Yes, the building inspector letter, Dave Roach.
literally
It
my
is
right hand.
right
Jane.
here, right here,
And we have.
with my notes.
Thank you very much. We also have a letter to us and to our town planner dated November 17th from David Roach, our building commissioner. So thank you very much. I think that's all that we have at this time. Is that right, Alex? That's what you have? Thank you very much. As we open to the public comment, we'd like to remind you of our ground rules designed to provide for public comment in a respectful manner. Do we have, can you stop sharing your screen, please, for a moment? And do you see if anyone has their hand up? Okay, so we ask that you state your name and address for the record. Please address your remarks to the chair. We ask that you keep your remarks to 3 minutes. If it's just as effective to simply say that you agree with a previous speaker instead of repeating another point that someone else had spoken about for 3 minutes. We'll cycle through between Zoom and in the room. That intentionally rhymed. We'll allow you to speak a second time if there are no additional speakers. Your questions may not necessarily be answered as they come up unless the answer is immediately available by board members, by the participant, and by town staff. Otherwise, we'll ask staff to note the question so we can address it subsequently. And your own observations are particularly helpful. If you're unable to speak here tonight, we ask that you submit your comments as quickly and as soon as possible to us, to the board, by emailing planning@needhamma.gov. That's planning@needhamma.gov, and those will be held as part of the public record. I'd like at this time to invite a very patient gentleman, a resident, to come to the table if you may. It seemed like you wanted to speak a couple of times. We ask you to again state your name and your address, please.
My name is Dave Case. I'm the butter at 36 Central Ave, right next door to what used to be the car lot, the nightmare that was there back in the day. The plans look beautiful. The landscaping looks nice. I like what's going on there. I did have a few questions about any type of privacy fence or anything that's going to separate the properties there at all, or is it just the shrubbery? I had a lot of issues in the past with Pannellas with the trash blowing in, scratch tickets, all that into the property there, so I was just curious if there was going to be any type of...
And I assume none of them were winners either.
No.
Do you want to respond to that on the privacy fence?
Are you able to respond to that?
So we can put a fence up along that side.
Okay. All right.
Some type of more decorative, not a chain link fence.
Central Avenue, so you're
Not a
pretty
chain
far
link.
away from the trash dumpsters.
There's currently no fence shown in that area?
Yeah, I don't think there is on the...
That's the plot plan there, if you guys wanted to look at
It
it.
looks like
That's
there's
my
a double
house.
line, that's why it looked like there was a...
In that corner where the dumpster is right,
The
so
curb.
it's down back a ways there, which is...
Just for the record,
As long as it has an enclosure around it.
just for the record, we're looking at
Revitalize the curb, yeah.
the plot plan of, what was your name, sir?
Dave Case.
Of Dave Case.
K-A-S-E.
In relation to the site. Thank you very much.
You can shrink that, blow it up.
Thank you very much, David. Very helpful. Do you have any other comments or questions?
That's it.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming tonight and being engaged in the process and having an opportunity to ask
Yeah, it's
your
good to
comments
see
and
what-
questions.
Like I said, I like, the layout looks really nice. It'll be a huge improvement over what's existing, that's for sure.
Thank you very much for your comments.
All right.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
Alex, do we have any comments? It doesn't look like we do from the... So at this time, do we have any further comments from our colleagues? I apologize for eating, but my blood sugar level just dropped and I need some sugar. Lee, other than comments from the police department and the engineering department, do we have anything else outstanding at this time?
Well, I think...
No, we do not.
They're going to revise their landscaping in accordance with the design review board comments, is that correct?
Correct.
So we'll get to see a new landscaping plan?
Well, that'll include a fence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that have to go back through the design review board? Excuse me.
No, the way it works is design review boards makes a recommendation to planning.
Yes, yes,
And
I
planning
understand.
has the ultimate jurisdiction.
Yes.
So basically, if you take their comments and you say, okay, you're compliant with their comments, it's within your purview.
Yeah. So comments are clear,
Understood.
you know, as they are here.
Okay,
Just do
very
it.
good. So at this time,
And then the handicap spaces, you might be changing location of the handicap spaces and taking another look at the Board of Health and whether the trash you're providing is sufficient to meet that demand. And if it's not, what are you going to do and where are you going to do it?
did you mention the accessibility parking?
Well, I think you brought it up.
I know, but did you just mention it now? Did I miss?
No, I
Yes.
did not. I
Well,
was just
she
talking
meant-
about the cat.
Somebody mentioned it on the plan.
I
You
did. I know I did, but I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if she just
I
mentioned
did
it.
not just now,
as-
no.
'cause Jean was just giving a summary,
Right.
very detailed, summary of what's outstanding. So we'll add the
Oh, I did mention the parking, the handicap parking
Yes, that's what
spaces
I-
and how
yeah,
they
yeah.
would, they might be relocated.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I did mention that, actually.
we're covered off. My right hand is stronger than my left. That's you, by the way.
Natasha, you should be insulted by that
I'm
comment.
insulted.
No. I only meant like I was left-handed. I wasn't even going there. I wasn't even crossing the boundary.
Also,
We're having
you
fun.
weren't named an esteemed colleague, and I wasn't either.
That's the night's still early, Artie. The night is still
Okay,
early.
well, it's gonna snow, so
Let's get moving.
You said something positive about my descriptions of landscaping. You didn't mention Artie. He's often.
Yeah, I know, but we've had, that's true. I apologize. Artie, you're just as esteemed and astute
Phew.
with your
Thank you.
landscape
I can
observations.
sleep tonight.
At this point, I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing to December 5 at what time, Lee?
7:05.
At 7:05. So so
So moved.
7:05. So we have a motion and a second by
I
Artie?
second his motion.
You can
You-
second.
I think he feels bad.
It is
so
second.
I'm
Natasha-
No, you I don't know. I heard it.
More esteemed than
I
I
was
am.
esteemed at one point, but then
At
I'm below
She
G
gets
right
it
now.
second.
Tiered cake of esteem.
That's the second. I'm sorry.
All right.
It's-
Dean, I'm
Made and
honored to
seconded.
be
Okay.
right after you.
So who
When I get over the
seconded it?
slight.
Everybody did.
Natasha,
Everybody
she
seconded.
got it ahead of me.
All right. So the second goes to Natasha. And any discussion? I think we've had it. Hearing none, I'll come to the vote. Paul Alpert.
Aye.
Artie Crocker. Natasha.
I didn't say anything, but that's okay. I thought it, and we're in sync. I thought it. You heard me think it.
For the record,
Say it.
Paul Alpert is a yes. Artie Crocker is a yes. Natasha
Yes.
Spada. Jean McKnight.
Yes.
The chair votes aye. This hearing is continued to December 5 at 7:05 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take a break
Thank
for a
you.
second. I need
Clarify George's
to
on
step up.
Monday.
I just need to step up.
Yes, yes.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess. We are back from recess, which comes to the next item on our agenda, which is our decision of 140 Kendrick Street. I have some comments that we had a letter dated November 10 from our town engineer that the building department to infiltrate the a half-inch of the stormwater from the solar panel runoff. So that's been addressed, that's been taken care of. And I think I need my computer open, but I had,
Wait a minute.
Lee, do you have the decision open?
Yes, I do.
So, at paragraph 1.5, do you have that up?
Yes, I do.
Where it says design review board approval. Approval is in there twice, so we could strike it, I think, from the first line.
Okay, fine.
Does that make sense? Another comment that I had was at 3.3, any changes, revisions, or modifications to the plan, and I say here to add beyond those permitted by this decision, shall require further approval by the board.
Okay.
At 3.12B, there's a future condition. We're making our approval conditional on a future condition by separate boards.
Can you please give me the section again? I missed that.
Sure, 3.12B. Mind if I borrow that for a second?
That's just a staging plan
3.12
for the,
B,
Yes.
for the construction.
the
Wait, did I-
construction management and staging plan has been submitted to the police chief and building commissioner for the review and approval.
Right, so we're making our, but the concept is, which we've had, you know, our town council has cautioned us on having an approval, our approval, conditional upon subsequent approval by other boards and agencies.
This is a standard provision, and this deals with the requirements before a building permit will be issued. No building permit shall be issued until certain things have happened.
Yeah.
And
That's just-
submitting the staging plan to the police chief and the building commissioner, we don't get into the staging plan.
So I don't have a problem with it. I'm just raising it because it's been discussed before where we're creating an approval, a condition of the board is contingent upon a subsequent approval by other boards. It happens in many places in our decision, but the question has come up as to whether or not
I think you're misinterpreting
that's possible.
what town council is telling you we cannot delegate.
Okay.
And boards are different too from officers. We're here talking about the police chief and the
Yes.
building commissioner.
Right.
Which I think is different from
Right.
saying,
They
well, we
are
wanted to
boards.
go to the design review board and have them approve it, or the conservation commission or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. I think that elevates it to an esteemed level, Gene.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Listen to your lawyers.
So I was raising that, so I appreciate that. Does anybody else have any other comments, red lines, or questions?
Yeah.
So, shall we vote the relief?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment,
Yes.
just from being on the CAPC, the Climate Action Plan Committee, with the building inspector. Just stormwater management in general, this is just a general piece. Our systems are pretty compromised, so anytime that we have stormwater management that could happen on site, instead of going straight into the system or even detained and then going into the system, it would be, greatly appreciated on any project. So I just wanted to bring that up because I know that's one of the things that happened with this, that he questioned the stormwater management and they
That's true, that's right.
so it's just something to think about as we're thinking about climate action and all of that, stormwater and resiliency and all of that we're
And the
compromised.
infrastructure.
And the infrastructure here, we're compromised with the infrastructure, so anything that we can mitigate. And it's just a general comment, and they were able to address it, so I just
Yeah,
wanted to
that's
say
right,
that we
they
should
did
keep that in
address
mind for
it,
other
yeah.
projects.
Thank you for calling
And I
that
just
out.
learned about that, so I just wanted to share that information.
Thank you for calling that out.
And on this particular project, they're changing what's going on with the existing storm management as far as the runoff from the garage. Aren't they, you're changing it to increase the capacity before, and is it flowing right into Cutler Lake? Where is that runoff going from the garage now? I thought they changed something.
Lee, are you able to speak to that?
Well, they're adding recharge. So they're recharging the roof, which wasn't recharged before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
As a result of adding
Yeah.
the solar panels.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
So-
correct.
And as a result from the building department, that,
Yeah.
that request of being sensitive to the fact that our capacity is limited.
So there have been multiple projects where we received comment from from our town engineer saying, as a matter of practice, that I think, is it, Paul, at lots that are over 1 acre or something, where although it's not required by law, it's recommended
Right.
to recharge.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is to recharge on site. Worst case scenario, you put it into a tank and it flows in slowly into the system. But ideally, we would recharge all on
So-
site, and it's not always possible, but just for us to keep in mind that
Well-
that's something that's pretty important for the town regarding capacity and
That's right.
infrastructure.
So more specifically, Lee, what I'd like to do is I'd like to add that to our, and Alex, I'd like to add that to our discussion about our standards, practices, goals, and changes to our bylaws and so on. Because and specifically what I'd like to do is I'd like Tom to come in, and maybe anyone else from his department, and to talk to us about what's reasonable in this circumstance. Are there other regulations that we can impose? If we're at a point, like Natasha's saying, that our infrastructure is at a critical point, that we need to make sure that we're more aware of that and doing the proper things to minimize the impacts.
I think what Tom is doing is he's applying the stormwater bylaw to these properties under what the current regulatory framework was. This was a situation where you had an existing facility, and so the trigger in terms of what's required under the bylaw for this type of facility is different, for example, than for new construction. But I think he's applying the rules of the town's stormwater bylaw.
Right, but we want to make sure that, especially in new construction and in any other larger project, that we're not spilling onto other sites, and
That's
that we're
right.
not, and that we're not. So, and that's something that Dave Roach was talking about. So I think it's really, we want to make sure that we're aware of what
Yeah.
the criteria is in
And if
town.
we need to
I
improve
think-
our regulatory framework to do that, then I suggest we do it.
I think the standard that the town uses for new construction is that it's recharged, I think, at a rate of 1 inch over the normal roof area for new construction. But if what would be helpful is if I invited Tom in for a planning board meeting, and he could explain to you what the town's practice is and what the bylaw is and what's currently required.
And to propose some solutions for existing buildings that may become reused, like as an example 100 West Street. So
Lee,
let's move
Lee,
to
is this something that's already covered under our major site plan review criteria? That we could piggyback onto that to require stormwater recharge?
Well, I think we have a requirement, but engineering is basically, when they're reviewing the site plans for us, they're applying the standards of the federal state law as well as our stormwater bylaw. So,
but they're only making those recommendations, and we have not imposed it as a requirement.
oh yes, when they're reviewing it, they're imposing it as a requirement.
Well, on new construction, but not on existing.
Yeah, but I'm hearing Natasha raise a separate issue.
It was something I wasn't aware of, that we're at capacity right now in the infrastructure, and that we have to be mindful of any project of how the stormwater is being managed on sites. And so for us to have that information and understand how that applies to all different types of projects, I think would be beneficial.
Agreed. What I'm saying is that we have
I'll be glad to invite him in to go over that with you
That's
for new
great.
construction and
Good.
existing buildings.
Thank you very much.
And if we could also cover, even though it's a different size project, how it fits into residential situations as well as far as stormwater management, and what happens with water flow and discharge flowing onto other properties, just as a whole concept.
So getting back to
Yes, the
140
agenda.
Kendrick. Mr. Chair, I move that we grant a major project site plan review special permit amendment under section 7.4 of our zoning bylaw and section 3.2 of our major project site plan review special permit number 99-2, subject to and with the benefit of the plan modifications, conditions, and limitations being set forth in our decision.
We have a motion by Paul. Do we have a second?
Second.
By Natasha. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll come to the vote. Paul Alpert.
Aye.
Artie Crocker.
Aye.
Natasha Spada.
Aye.
Jean McKnight.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion passes. Motion carries.
Now,
A second motion?
is there any further discussion on the decision itself, or are we ready for my motion? I move that we adopt the decision as presented to us with the changes which were presented by Adam Block this evening.
So we have a motion by Paul to approve the decision as modified. Do we have a second?
Second.
The chair is in doubt. Do we have a second? Waiting on a second.
Second.
Seconded by Jean. She beat you to it this time, Artie. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll come to the vote. Paul Alpert.
Aye.
Artie Crocker.
Aye.
Natasha Spada.
Aye.
G. McKnight.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We have approved the decision as modified. So it's, we don't have any minutes tonight. Lee, or Jean, do you want to speak to tomorrow night?
Oh, yeah, certainly, and Natasha might want to add. We have the meeting going to be at Powers Hall. This is what we call the Housing Plan Working Group. It's a community meeting, and a whole year's work has led up to this meeting tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at Powers Hall. We expect it to run till 9 p.m. We will have a presentation that we hope to keep brief, so that the emphasis will be on the opportunity for people to ask questions and make comments on the draft housing plan. And we will attempt to respond to questions at the meeting. We will make note of comments and discuss them at our next Housing Plan Working Group meeting on December, I think it's December 8th.
Could I confirm that 7 p.m. tomorrow night?
7 p.m., right.
7 to 9.
Yeah.
I will be there.
And that
Looking
might
forward
be
to
our
it.
last meeting of the Housing Plan Working Group. If at that December 8th meeting, we are satisfied with the revisions to the Housing Plan Working Group, to the Housing Plan that Karen Suniber will have made or will make per whatever we decide on that night. I think that is, yes, that is December 8th, that final meeting.
Lee, do you have other, Natasha, do you have other comments?
No, I think that,
I'm sorry.
no, it's great what Jean just said. I do want to thank all of that. We've had a great working group, I have to say. We've been working over a year together, and it's been excellent. A lot of knowledge, and we broke it up into subgroups, and we're able to have everyone participate, and it's been just a pleasure to work with Jean and everyone else.
And, really,
Natasha, do you want to say something about the zoning subcommittee for the climate action committee that you're on?
Yes, Jean, did you want to finish on housing, or?
no, I wanted to say that you and I are going to share a lot of the presentation. I'll be doing the kind of initial introduction with a PowerPoint, and then Oscar Mertz will present the zoning initiatives and strategies, and then we have Emily Cooper, who's going to present a few strategies coming out of the housing preservation and development subgroup, and then Natasha then will take over and present for the capacity building subgroup, and will handle the questions and answers and comments.
Very good.
And then Lee mentioned, I'm also on the Climate Action Plan Committee, which is where I learned about stormwater and some of the other initiatives that have been going on in town. And so that also, I am the, I guess, chair with Oscar Mertz is part of my co-chair for the zoning group. And so we're looking at 5 action items, 3 to 5 action items that we could push forward to the larger group. And so the group consists of Lee Newman, myself, Dave Roach, Oscar Mertz, and Jared, is it? Or from the engineering, sorry. Justin, sorry. Thank you so much. And so I'm learning a lot about what's happening what has happened in town, some initiatives that have been taken place, and then some great ideas, and then also researching a lot of the zoning for all other towns. We've kind of broken it up into different tasks for different people, so it's been really interesting. So we'll give an update at the next one. So we have public meetings basically, and we just had one at the beginning of November. We have one the first Friday of December and the first Friday of January, and then we report back to the larger group. So if anyone is interested, let us know, and we'll make sure that we send the information over, even though it's public anyway. But just remind everyone that you're more than welcome.
I am, because I'm looking forward to collaborating our efforts, so we can actually jump into some action.
Lee, did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it very well.
And as an addition, I'm the chair of the Natural Resources Working Group out of the Climate Action Committee. We've had a couple of committee meetings, and we're starting to narrow it down just to bring something to the next Climate Action meeting, which is this coming Monday. We'll give them some idea where we're going with it. Not that anything's locked in stone, it's not. And so, it's interesting. How many items we bring to it, I'm not certain right now, but it'll be interesting to see where we go come January.
Well, on to that point, we have correspondence from by memo from the select board and the town manager dated November 8th, in which they were sharing certain select board goals relating to planning board interests, one of which was working towards a tree bylaw. Mm-hmm. So, I look forward to coordinating an effort.
At this point, so we had a list of like 38 items, and we all individually kind of voted on them as a certain priority, and everything related to trees at this point has been at the top.
Really?
Whether it be doing getting a survey of the tree canopy in town, a LiDAR of the whole area, getting a tree bylaw, preservation bylaw in there, doing something with additional things related to trees, or I forget, there was something else called related to. Ed had something he was interested in. Ed Olson had something he was interested in when trees are being cut down, to make the cuts a little bit more accessible to people if they want to do something with it, some of the cuts from the trees. Anyways, something to keep the resources, make them so they're usable. We certainly have, stormwater mitigation is part of the list going on in there. Where it fits finally, I'm not certain. But it was very interesting to see, it's keeping everyone independently looking at the whole list and saying what starts to be important, what is important to them.
Ultimately, what I think may happen here is that we will modify, Paul, to your point, some of the site plan special permit requirements that may include some of these elements. That's what I'm, looking to achieve. So Lee, do you have other reports at this time?
No, I was just going to cover the items that Jean and Natasha had covered.
Okay. Alex, do you have any other comments for reports? We have two other items of correspondence, both relating to 557 Highland Avenue. We had an email dated November 2 from Jesse Caddy, and we had an email dated November 14th from Holly Charbonnier. It's 10:05.
Mr. Chair, there's an item on our agenda.
Committee appointment.
Committee appointment.
I was just coming to that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
When you started to mention the time, I thought you were for a motion to adjourn,
not
I am
yet.
prepared to make.
I know, not yet. But Lee, do you want to discuss the Design Review Board appointment?
Sure. I just wanted to talk to the planning board a little bit about process to fill a position on the Design Review Board. There's a vacancy now on the Design Review Board, and it was the planning board's appointment. Steve Tanner, who was a sign maker, has resigned from the Design Review Board, and so the planning board needs to appoint a person to fill his position. We've advertised it. We've received three people have indicated an interest in filling that role. It needs to be filled either by a graphic artist or someone with expertise in the design field. The select board has a process of managing their appointments by having the chair and the vice chair of the board, as well as the chair of the board to which the person is going to be appointed, do the interviews, rather than have these interviews done at a formal planning board meeting or select board meeting. And this group then makes a recommendation to the full board on the appointment, and the person that's been recommended attends that board meeting. And I was going to suggest that that would be maybe the strategy or the framework that this board would follow in filling this vacancy.
So that'd be you and me, Jean.
I'm certainly willing to do that, and I think it's a good process. I wonder, though, with Natasha's background, could the planning board, if Natasha's willing, to appoint Natasha rather than me?
I think that would be fine. I was just letting you know how the select board manages it.
Yeah.
We just want 2 instead of 3, so we're not in violation of an open meeting law.
Yes.
That's right, and then we can schedule it during the week.
Natasha, you up for it? What does it consist of?
Interviewing 3 people sounds like, huh?
Yes, it would be interviewing 3 people.
Next week, is that what you were thinking?
No, I haven't set up the time to do it. I just wanted to agree on the process, and then, Lisa from the planning office will set the calendar up to manage it, sometime within the next week or 2.
And who else, Paul, would,
Adam.
Would you be the other person, or do you want me to do it?
I'll do it.
I'm not trying to avoid work, but.
It's okay, I understand.
Okay, great.
I know you're not.
Can I ask, however, that the resumes for the 3 applicants be sent to all 5 of us?
Good idea, yeah.
Sure. And any comments that anyone has, send to Lee.
Right.
Okay, not to the rest of us. That's good. Yeah.
Can I just add something, just, again, with my Nori hat on, is that when, at the Boston Society of Architects, when I sat on the board for many years, we had this thing where when we were appointing people to things or nominating people, we look at the whole board and see, just with the composition of the board.
Yeah.
And just to make sure that we have all different ages and gender and,
When I was on the design review board, 2015 is the last time I was probably on it, somewhere around then, it was certainly all white men. That's all I know is all white men.
And I think, and you need white men also, I'm just saying, just like, right, so, but it's just making sure that if we
Hopefully
have.
we have a diverse field of applicants if we don't.
Well, there's 2 women now, so things have changed a little, Artie.
Right, things have changed.
Well, there are 2 women on it now.
But just keeping in mind that the demographics, to make sure that we have representation, as broad representation, as long as people are qualified also, it's not like we just
Exactly.
want
So it sounds like Lee said there are 2 women on it right now.
But I was thinking, when Lee brought this up, I was thinking of the experience and background of the people who are currently on the board and how the new people might fit into that, even though somehow we're supposed to pick somebody who has graphic artist or a design background.
Right.
The zoning bylaw is prescriptive about the skill set.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, but it still would be good to know what the background is of the others on the board.
Yes.
Right, just to understand, you have all different,
That's part
perspectives.
of our DEI initiative. Thank you for
yeah,
bringing
so
that up.
I'm just trying to,
That's very
be
good.
mindful of when we look at them.
Now, before we take a motion to adjourn, I know that, you mentioned that there might be some weather coming. I would be prepared to continue some of our deliberation going back to 557 Highland Avenue, but if people make a motion to adjourn, then we don't do that.
Oh, I just want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I move we,
It's up to 10.
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn.
Just go.
And we have a meeting tomorrow night, too.
Yes, that's right.
And I have a meeting on Monday also for CPC, so.
Very
Somebody
good.
second my motion, or else
I
it's just gonna.
second, yeah.
I think Artie might have done that first. We have a motion by Paul, a second by Artie to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll come to the vote. Paul Alpert.
Aye.
Artie Crocker. Natasha Spada.
Aye.
Gene McKnight.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We sit adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.